my kid and Johnny Smith, and I've been booked up with them. But Lethal Larry Cameron, you came in and you interfered when I was finishing off that weasel on Johnny Smith. Well, let me tell you something, Lethal Larry Cameron. You inflicted a lot of pain, you hurt my neck, and you busted my head with a huge bump. But I'll tell you something, Lethal Larry, that's not the reason Owen Hart is leaving this promotion. I got contract commitments in another federation, and I'll tell you something, Lethal Larry, nobody does this to Owen Hart. I'm not leaving because I'm not scared of you. I'm leaving because I got contract commitments. And Lethal Larry, don't you ever forget it, because you won't ever get away with doing this to Owen Hart. One day, I will come back, and I'll be like white lightning, and I'll be coming to haunt you, Lethal Larry. Nobody does this to me.
Talk is Jericho, baby. Talk is Jericho. Talk is Jericho, mama. Talk is me.
All right, welcome to Talk is Jericho. It's the pod of thunder and rock and roll. Let's take it straight to Duff McKagan and the joke of the week.
Hey, Chris Jericho, it's Duff McKagan calling you. I'm in my car, in the driveway of a rehearsal place. I just heard Chewbacca got off work, and he went down to the bar after work. And there was a few people in there, not a ton, but he sat down at the bar, and the bartender came out and served the person to his left and served the person to Chewbacca's right, and just kind of went away for a while, made their drinks, brought him back to those people, then disappeared for a while longer. Chewbacca didn't want to be a dick, but he's like kind of raising his hand up, and bartender comes back out, serves a couple other people at the bar, doesn't come to Chewbacca. Chewbacca just wants a drink after work, doesn't want to be a dick, raises his hand, the bartender goes away for a while, brings those people the drinks, goes away again. Chewbacca's been half an hour. Finally, the bartender comes up to Chewbacca, straight to his face, and goes, what can I get you, sir? And Chewbacca says, thank you very much.
The Chewbacca impression alone made me laugh. I'm not sure what the actual joke reminds me of my cousin Lee when he was like 5 years old and saying, I made up a joke. What is it? There's a chair in the corner. That's not a joke. It's kind of what I said to Duff. He goes, no, air it. It's going to be amazing. Well, it is amazing because Duff did it. And we love Duff McKagan for phoning him in those jokes every single Friday. And be here next Friday when Duff does a live joke of the week in person. That's right, Duff McKagan returns to Talk is Jericho to talk about his new solo album, Tenderness, the Guns N' Roses Not in This Lifetime Stadium tour, GNR's future plans, and Duff also gives us a little history lesson and tells us a live joke of the week. But today, another friend of the show, Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer newsletter, is back again. He was just on a few weeks ago. This time we're celebrating the life and legacy of one of my heroes, Owen Hart. It's been 20 years since Owen's tragic passing when he fell from the ceiling at the Kemper Arena in Kansas City at the Over the Edge pay-per-view. We're going to remember that sad night, but we're also going to remember Owen's amazing career, how influential he was to so many, how just much of a high-flying pioneer he was, how funny he was, great personality. We got stories from Owen's time in Japan and his 2 runs at WWE's feud with his brother Brett and his great tag team matches he had with his brother-in-law Davey Boy Smith. Let's get right into it. Dave Meltzer returns to talk Owen Hart. Right here, Talk is Jericho.
There's no doubt, Brett. You did some great things. You've done it all. You've done everything possible in the World Wrestling Federation that any single man can do. You've done it all. But you notice I'm using the past tense, Brett. You've done it. That was in the past. That was then. This is now. You've never faced me, Brett. All those other accolades that you earned, everything that you did in the past, that was before you ever saw the Rocket face-to-face, one-on-one. So everything that you did, all those great achievements, all those victories, all those world titles, all those intercontinental titles, everything that you did, Brett. Let me sum this up. You did all that. But I go out at WrestleMania 10, and I beat you 1, 2, 3, which is what I'm gonna do. And you know it, and I know it. And it's only a matter of time, then that makes me better than you, doesn't it? It's simple to figure out. You do all that, but I take it one step higher. Because I surpass everything you've done, and I surpass you because I'm gonna beat you. And that makes me better than you. Correct? I think so. And you know what? When you light the rocket on fire, and it blasts off at WrestleMania 10, and it soars straight to the top, there's nothing that will ever stop Rocket.
All right, so it's very strange. It's one of those anniversaries that you don't think about, but this week, May 23rd of this year, is the 20-year anniversary of Owen Hart's passing, and I'm with Dave Meltzer here. We've discussed many of the biggest stories in wrestling, the Chris Benoit tragedy. The last time we spoke was when Vince bought WCW. Do you feel that the Owen Hart's passing is one of those top stories in wrestling history?
I mean, I think from a media standpoint, as I remember it, the biggest one would be Chris Benoit, but I think the second biggest, as far as mainstream media, was Owen Hart, because it was live on a pay-per-view, and it was, you know, because that was front-page news in, like, you know, newspapers all over the United States,
Right.
which, like the Montreal Screwjob, really, that was a gigantic story within wrestling, but, like, the average person on the street, if you go to the grocery store, you know, doesn't go up to you and go, hey, what do you think about the Montreal Screwjob? The only ones that I can recall from a pro wrestling standpoint where, you know, you go out the next day, whatever, and people come up to you that were, you know, would be, you know, the Chris Benoit thing, which, you know, you and I know far too well, which lasted for weeks, honestly, and then the Owen Hart thing, which, you know, lasted for that whole week, where it was like one of the most talked about, maybe the most talked about story in the country, you know, for a couple days there.
Yeah, and when you think about it too, I think because the Benoit, the ramifications of it were so much bigger because it almost brought down the whole business. But, you know, keeping in mind this was 8 years before Chris's passing, it was kind of the same thing. The fact that, you know, the decision to continue the show going forward, and then just the whole kind of legal battle between Vince and the Harts, and then the Harts battling amongst themselves. I mean, like you said, within wrestling, well documented, but even making it like you would go into the grocery store and look at National Enquirer and it would say, you know, professional wrestler falls to death from ceiling, and I think everybody knows that story. Might not know his name, but it was a guy that had, like you said, had some name value, an actual legit main eventer at times in the WWE, but also kind of had ups and downs there as well.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is, like, you get this, I kind of like to look at two different, like, angles of it. Number one would be in Canada, where, you know, the Hart family is the first family of Canadian wrestling, without a doubt, especially for that generation. And, you know, Bret was a star, you know, a huge star, but also, like, if you're in Western Canada, you know, Stu was a legend, and just the whole idea of Hart family, Stampede Wrestling had a lot of television, you know, even outside of Western Canada, at certain times it was syndicated, so a lot of people in Canada saw Owen Hart from, like, literally the start of his career as this teenage phenom, or, you know, rookie phenom anyway, and, you know, saw him go to WWE and have his ups and downs in WWE. It was definitely a struggle. You know, he had two different terms there. He had a great program with Bret. You know, I mean, that was excellent. And then sometimes he would fall down, and he would be tag team champion and things like that. He was a guy on the card that, if you were like a real close fan, or you know, a wrestler, you knew that Owen Hart was, like, you know, really one of the most talented guys in the business. And at times he was pushed like that, and at times he wasn't. But yeah, like in wrestling, you know, because of the Hart family name, it was big. In the United States, I mean, it was a giant news story in the United States just because of, you know, the nature of what happened. And then it retained that because the lawsuit was so contentious and you know, such a big dollar amount, and involved WWE, WWF as it was known at the time. And, you know, so even years later, it remained a news story, you know, after, you know, the initial incident.
And we've seen, I mean, we just saw it a couple weeks ago with Silver King, you know, passing away in the ring. We know, Kobashi did, or Misawa did, and Gary Albright and those type of guys. I mean, even go back to Ted DiBiase's father, Mike DiBiase, but nobody had ever before this died, which, I mean, I hate to say this sort of thing, but even in this day and age, that nobody has died in the ring due to some kind of an accident, some kind of a move screwing up, or, you know, obviously this was a stunt that went totally wrong. Is this the first time that you can remember, or that you knew of somebody actually dying in the ring from an accident rather than from a heart attack or something like that?
Well, there have been guys in different places that have done stunts that have gone, you know, like moves or something, or you know, just, you know, injuries. You know, I mean, Misawa was actually in the ring. So there's been deaths in the ring from, you know, that weren't.
Why is Cronin You stopped. I didn't request for that to stop. I never requested you to fucking stop. Why did you fucking
Lethal
stop?
Larry. Lethal Larry Cameron, you
Could have happened to Edge when they basically.
Family is the first family of Canadian wrestling, without a doubt, especially for that generation. And, you know, Brett was a star, you know, a huge, huge star. But also, like, if you're in Western Canada, you know, Stu was a legend. And just the whole idea of Hart Family, Stampede Wrestling had a lot of television. You know, even outside of Western Canada, at certain times it was syndicated. So a lot of people in Canada saw Owen Hart from, like, literally the start of his career as this teenage phenom, or, you know, rookie phenom anyway. And, you know, saw him go to WWE and have his ups and downs in WWE. It was definitely a struggle. You know, he had two different terms there. He had a great program with Brett. You know, I mean, that was excellent. And then sometimes he would fall down, and he would be tag team champion and things like that. He was a guy on the card that, if you were like a real close fan or, you know, a wrestler, you knew that Owen Hart was, like, you know, really one of the most talented guys in the business. And at times he was pushed like that, and at times he wasn't. But yeah, like in wrestling, you know, because of the Hart family name, it was big. In the United States, I mean, it was a giant news story in the United States just because of, you know, the nature of what happened. And then it retained that because the lawsuit was so contentious and you know, such a big dollar amount, and involved WWF as it was known at the time. And, you know, so even years later, it remained a news story, you know, after, you know, the initial incident.
And we've seen, I mean, we just saw it a couple weeks ago with Silver King, you know, passing away in the ring. We know Kobashi did, or Misawa did, and Gary Albright and those type of guys. I mean, even go back to Ted DiBiase's father, Mike DiBiase, but nobody had ever before this died, which, I mean, I hate to say this sort of thing, but even in this day and age, that nobody has died in the ring due to some kind of an accident, some kind of a move screwing up, or, you know, obviously this was a stunt that went totally wrong. Is this the first time that you can remember, or that you knew of somebody actually dying in the ring from an accident rather than from a heart attack or something like that?
Well, there have been guys in different places that have done stunts that have gone, you know, like moves or something, or you know, just, you know, injuries. You know, Misawa was actually in the ring. So there have been deaths in the ring from,
Sure,
you know, that weren't heart attacks, but there was nothing like this in the sense it was this elaborate stunt where, you know, it's one thing like you're in the middle of the match, and in a sense, you know, you're, you know, not that people die in wrestling often, but, you know, in a sense, you do put your life on the line. You know, one slip and something like that, you know, like the move that you do in, you know, 80% of your matches, you know, nearly killed Hayabusa and almost certainly led to him dying very young.
Right.
I don't think that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Lion
you
salt,
do
yeah.
you do put your life on the line, but the one with this one was, it was like, when it was over, it's kind of like, it becomes so needless because this was something that, like, never, you know what I mean? It never needed to happen. It was kind of, I don't want to say a bad idea because, you know, Sting had done it for a different, but it wasn't as safe as the one Sting did. But people had repelled from the ceiling before, but, you know, you can go like, did you really need to do it? And then all those questions that get asked, and just the finality of everything, because it was such a, I mean, it was really one of the most heartbreaking moments, maybe the most heartbreaking moment that I've ever covered. You know, and there have been some, you know, spectacular, I don't say spectacular deaths, but there have been some big name deaths. But I do think the Owen Hart one was the most heartbreaking because you look back and go, you just go, it never should have happened. I mean, not that like Eddie Guerrero's death ever should have happened, but it's like, look, he was a wrestler and this is what he did and this is what happened and it sucks and it's horrible. But with Owen, you go like, it just never should have happened.
Well, and the thing is too, okay, you mentioned Misawa, but Misawa also died, like you said, he took a back suplex. It was just years of neck problems that was the final straw. Similar to
Right.
what would have happened to Edge had he not had that doctor's appointment, or, you know, it could have happened to Edge when they basically said you can never wrestle again, and he had to retire right after WrestleMania. Well, what happened to Misawa? What happened to Perro Aguayo Jr.? You know, those are things that have been a cumulative buildup of all these injuries. But Owen's thing, like you said, was just this accident. And you mentioned Sting. not that there's a difference, but Sting is also a main event guy who was this very mysterious character, like the Phantom of the Opera coming down from the rafters to wreak havoc. Whereas Owen at this point was playing the Blue Blazer as almost a comedy figure, like a bumbling, stumbling superhero, out of touch superhero in the Blue Blazer. So when you say it didn't have to happen, it's almost like they were just doing a comedy gimmick with it anyways. He could have done was Fred Ottman, what the hell was he called? The Stormbringer or whatever.
Taskmaster.
Taskmaster, he comes through the wall and falls down. They could have just done that with him.
Well, I mean, the thing too is it was really, it's hard to imagine today because things are so different. I mean, maybe they'll be the same in a year, but back then when you had that real heated wrestling war, and I mean, it was a spoof on Sting. I mean, that's what it was.
Really?
I mean, they would have, if Sting hadn't been doing that as part of his MO, they would have never come up with that idea to kind of spoof the superhero thing. It's like nobody had bad intentions. You know what I mean? It's like it's hard for me to go in there and go, oh, those people who made this thing happen, because I'm sure that in their own ways, everyone who decided on that probably feels as guilty can be
Sure.
for it happening and for that decision. But it wasn't like they were out there, like there was no malice in it. But it was basically this spoof of a superstar with the other promotion, and trying to kind of play off that. And the belt that he was wearing, the buckle unbuckled, and you're whatever it is, 70 feet above the ring, and you fall straight down, like straight down. I mean, and people at first, probably figured, because and I just remembered this. I mean, you probably do too. When they did that in WCW, if you remember once, before this,
Right.
where like they spoofed that the guy fell, but it was a dummy because it was just trying to do a shock moment. You know what I mean?
That's
So
right.
it looked
It was a dummy Sting, like a Monty Python sketch where he fell from the ceiling, and everyone
Right.
was surprised, and they turned around, the real Sting is there, or whatever the hell it was. But I forgot about that.
Right. So because of that, if you were a wrestling fan and you kind of see that, you probably think, WCW already did this stunt. And so immediately, because I don't think in the building people really knew what was going on right away. And, I mean, from what I understand, it kind of got around the building like maybe an hour later that he was taken to the hospital and blah, 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 blah. Because there's nothing said in the building. So, because I think part of it was they were afraid that, the fans in the building knew it would kill the show. And they decided to keep the show going, which, was, at that stage, they probably shouldn't have. But on the flip side, it's like you don't have exactly a lot of preparation if you're running a wrestling company for an incident like this. Now you do. Now you have that precedent. But when they were doing it in Vince's, this thing happens, it's not like you've got, okay, in the event of someone falling from the ceiling and on a show, this is our protocol of what we do and what we tell the fans and how we handle. This is all like, oh my God, what happens? And we've got a live show going on, and immediately I'm not saying you're gonna think, like, keep the show going. There's a million things that you're thinking, but rational thinking is probably not happening at that moment.
Well, and it's easy to judge in hindsight and retrospect, like you said, but when the show is actually going on, and once again, this is just pontificating and just being the devil's advocate. When did they find out that Owen had passed away? Half an hour later? An hour later?
Yeah.
In the meantime, maybe they're thinking, well, hopefully he'll be okay, or we don't know what to do, just keep the show going. By the time we find out he's passed away, the show's almost done. But the interesting thing, and we'll talk more about the whole situation, but it's crazy to me. He was only 34 years old.
Yeah.
Think about that, Dave.
With two young kids. And the other thing about it was, not that like your match quality is like the be all and end all, but if he had lived, all those, because you got to remember, the world that he was in the 90s was a very different world than the 2000s when it came
Yes.
to pro wrestling as far as styles and guys. Like you being a key part of it. Like if you were in WWE, in the 80s and 90s, you'd have struggled. But in the 2000s, you could be a top guy because they were, it wasn't about size and bodies. It was a lot more about overall entertainment and all in the ring. And he was getting this, he would have gotten an influx of you and Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit and Rey Mysterio and guys like that, to where he wouldn't be a small guy, and he had guys that he could work with and have these, and fit in and have these incredible matches. Like I completely believe that 3 years later he'd have had the greatest series of matches in his career.
I agree times 1,000. So once again, we're talking about 34. He started in 86 or 85, so he'd been doing it for 18, 19 years, it was probably a little jaded because most of the guys from that time frame were. I know Davey Boy Smith was. Can you imagine? Because right afterwards, he'd already started working with Edge and Christian and those guys. One of the reasons, if you would have said, what are the top 10 reasons why you're leaving WCW to go to WWE? Towards the number 8, number 9, it would have been to get the chance to work with Owen Hart. Like, that was a huge reason for me because I was very much influenced by Owen Hart to get into the wrestling business to begin with. So I was headed there, and then, you know, Chris would have been there pretty shortly after, and Eddie, I'm sure they had worked together in New Japan, Team Malenko, and then of course you had Oscar, Mysterio, all those guys coming in. There was a huge resurgence of guys that I could actually work, which A, would have given Owen great opponents, and B, I think mentally it would have given him motivation and inspiration to say, drop this comic bullshit. Let me get back to being the Owen Hart that basically influenced all these guys. You know?
Yeah. I think that, and also not just that, but all the Edge and Christians and Hardys and all those guys that were coming up. You know, I mean, Edge and Christian had to grow up watching him. You know, like
Sure they did.
You know, and people like that, where you have the young guys, kind of like the role you had when you probably turned 40. You know what I mean? Where you have guys who grew up and they watched you and they kind of revitalized you into, you know,
Yes.
you know, whether it's a more modern style or just, hey, you know, let me keep up with these guys, and it's just fresh working with new guys with new ideas. And Owen would have been what you know what you were
Completely.
years later at the latter part of your career there.
It's the role that I still play, Dave. I mean, that's why it's so relevant for me right now to be in AEW with all the stuff I did in New Japan, because I wasn't working with guys the same age as me. I was working with guys that were a generation younger that were teaching me as much as I was teaching them. And when you work with younger guys and have great matches, it keeps you relevant. You know what I mean? It's like when I see, you know, Goldberg versus Undertaker, I'm like, why would either one of those guys want that match? If it was Goldberg versus Lashley and Undertaker versus, I don't know, Reigns or whatever, it gives you more longevity and makes you more contemporary, which, like you said, I think Owen, because I remember seeing a match with Owen probably in about 97. You'll probably know exactly which one. It was for the European title. It was Owen versus Davey. And it was
The Berlin match.
amazing, right?
Yeah, fantastic match. Yeah.
Because both those guys had some motivation in Europe, working with each other, going back to their roots, which are being great workers, Japanese, English, Mexican styles. And you saw that match, you go, those guys can still do this. If they have the right motivation and the right opponent, they can go out there and do this any night they want to. And I think, like you said, Owen would have probably been the first guy to go, you know what? This is becoming a lot of fun again, because now I'm being challenged and doing the wrestling that I learned while I was training.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it because, again, in that era, with, you know, nothing against, it was just a different group of guys.
Sure it was.
But the style of wrestling that he excelled at when he did Japan and when he did Stampede early, you know, yeah, he could do it with Brett every night of the week, and him and Brett had phenomenal matches.
Yes.
I mean, some really phenomenal matches. But a lot of the guys just couldn't do that. Davey could do it, you know, and with Davey it was probably more interesting because Davey always had the ability, but, you know, with some, it's like he sometimes would get so carried away with his size that he would forget, I don't want to say forget, but he would, you know, he would get in the mentality of being a big guy when he had all that talent to work like a small guy. But when he's working with Owen and it's the finals of this tournament and they're both sitting out there, you know, one obviously wanted to have a great match to prove something to whoever, and yet they had like one of the best matches of that year.
And the thing is, too, I think I always said for Davey, he learned and was trained when he was a very skinny guy. So even though he gained 50, 60 pounds of this muscle, his instincts and his foundations were as a smaller guy, which I think is one of the reasons why he was still so agile, even though he was bigger, because he had trained and learned as a smaller guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about Owen's start in wrestling and his first matches in Stampede when he was a rookie. But before we do, let me say thank you to Arm & Hammer's new Cloud Control cat litter. Not only are they a fine sponsor of Talk is Jericho and a very honored one, they're making life a little better as well at the Irvin House for us and our cats. You guys know by now we have 3 cats, Mr. Mittens, Indy, and Snickers, and that means we've got a few litter boxes at our house, and we all have to clean those litter boxes. Most of the time the kids have to do it because it's on their chore charts, but there are times when both my wife and I have to take a turn as well. But now, thanks to Arm & Hammer's new Cloud Control litter, none of us are complaining about cleaning the litter boxes, and that's because there is no cloud of nasties when we scoop. Arm & Hammer's Cloud Control litter is 100% dust-free. It's free of heavy perfumes as well. It also helps reduce airborne dander from scooping, and that's why it's so awesome. So what happens in the litter box stays in the litter box. New Cloud Control cat litter by Arm & Hammer. More power to you. Meow.
LOD, tonight is just a small preview of what you're gonna get at Ground Zero.
As soon as we get in the ring with you tonight, we are going to destroy you. And then at the Fatal 4-Way LOD, when you get in the ring with the Hart Foundation, it is going to be fatal. Oh, what a rush.
Well, let's talk about Owen Hart and kind of how he got into the scene, because once again, I remember first seeing him. I discovered Stampede Wrestling in about 1986. I was a huge WWE fan, but back in those days, I'm not telling you this, but people that might not know, there were so many different territories. So when you grew up in Winnipeg, you would get the WWE, WWF at the time, every Saturday. We didn't get NWA, but we did get IWA out of Montreal, and we got WFWA based out of Winnipeg, and we got some of the Altomco Wrestling from Vancouver. But Stampede Wrestling, and you can help me with this was after Bruce Hart had revived it, after Stu had sold it to Vince and then got it back. That was probably about 1986, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was 86, and I think when they rebooted, Owen was like immediately the top guy, and he just started. And I mean, that it was a really interesting period to me, because it was almost like, you know, Owen, I guess probably just because, you know, they had the ring at the house, and, you know, he was a great athlete. You know, I mean, he was like really good. Like the first time I saw him, I remember he did like this diving headbutt 3/4 of the way across the ring, and it was like, whoa, God, you know, Owen, I mean, it's like, okay, so he's a Hart brother and all that, but it was kind of like, well, this guy's like really, you know, an amazing guy. And I mean, and he progressed so quick, and you know, his brother was booking, they made, you know, he was the star of the company for years until he went to WWF. And, you know, and went to Japan pretty early because Hiroshi Hase was there, and they had matches in Stampede. Hiroshi Hase was a heel who later became a big star in New Japan, and Hase, like, when Hase became a star in New Japan, he wanted Owen over because Owen was like his favorite opponent, and Liger, when Liger started, he was in Stampede, and he wanted Owen over to work with him in New Japan. So when Owen went to Japan, it was like he fit in like a glove. You know, from day one, he was like big junior heavyweight star, you know, for a couple of years, and then went to WWF. The first time was not a success. It was a very frustrating period for him. But the second time when he went back, it was better.
Well, let's just go back, because I remember, like I said, watching Stampede Wrestling, which you would get, and I always tell this story, like wanting to be a wrestler from a very young age, because I used to watch AWA with my grandmother. When you're watching WWE and you see, you know, WrestleMania and Madison Square Garden and, you know, Los Angeles, you know, Chicago and all these places, to a kid growing up in Winnipeg at the time when there was no internet really, none, you might as well be talking about Mars. Like New York City might as well be Mars, or might as well be, you know, the moon. Whereas when you see Calgary, I've been to Calgary. I know that my parents drive there with me in the back seat. It takes like 14 hours. I could go to Calgary and I could become a wrestler. And so I really got into watching Stampede because I could really accept that, and I could understand what it was. And I'll never forget, one day I was watching Stampede Wrestling, and they had this highlight video, and it was for the song Hearts on Fire by Bryan Adams. And what it was a 2 or 3 minute compilation of Owen Hart's greatest moves. Now, to see what Owen Hart was doing in '86, unbeknownst to me, he'd already been in England, and like you said, he'd probably been in Japan and probably done some work in Mexico at that point. It would be like watching a Pentagon and Phoenix highlight tape now. Like you're watching this stuff that you'd never seen before in your life. And I was so enamored with it. I remember thinking, I want to be a wrestler, and I want to be like that guy. It was the first time I can legitimately remember going, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And I think it was about September of '86 or so. So, but it's one of those moments, like, I don't know if you've had one of those in your life of when you wanted to become a journalist or whatever it was, but that was the moment for me when I said, I want to do this, from watching that Owen Hart video.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and the other thing, too, with Owen was, for a guy like you, he was relatable. Because, I mean, like, if you watch, and you know, tons of kids watch and want to see, you know, want to be like Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior. But you know, I mean, there's probably 10 people in the world, or maybe 200 people in the world, who could be that, and you weren't one of them. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's no way. You're not going to be 6'3", 6'6". You're not going to be 280 jacked up like that, and if you were, your heart might explode. So that's, you know what I mean? But Owen Hart, you could watch that and go, he's pretty much my size, and, you know, he's athletic as all hell, but at least it's like, you know, and that was the one thing with Stampede was they were hard-working guys, but they were not, like, you know, most of the guys were normal-sized athletic guys. You know what I mean? Even,
Right.
you know, even the shooters were like weight division shooters from England that they would bring in, right? They
Sure.
weren't like 280-pound guys. Although Gary Albright was there, but that was the exception. You did have a few big guys. You had Mike Shaw, who actually I think was a big part of Owen getting over because he was the.
I was just gonna say, Mucken Singh was in all of those highlight reels that he was doing. He worked so well with Owen. He was like the perfect, like Mucken Singh was a big fat heel, not super tall, but he was a great base for Owen and all the stuff that he wanted to do.
Yeah, he was like 360, maybe even more. But the thing with him was he was very, you know, like how a lot of big guys in that era, not so much now, but in that era, a lot of the big guys wanted to wrestle this big guy style, and it makes, because when he went to WWE, I remember him telling me, like, one of the things was he would do all these cool suplexes on Mucken Singh that always got over, and then when he went to WWE and wanted to do them, the mentality was, well, it's not believable for a guy of your size to be throwing around a guy of that
Right.
size. So they, you know, wanted him to do the underdog stuff. So it took away a lot of the repertoire because the stuff that got him over was that Mucken Singh would go up for his suplexes, you know, which for a guy his size, immediately it's like, wow, you know, he must be super strong and he must be a tough guy because he can throw around this huge fat guy. And he could also throw in those aerial moves, which, you know, yeah, you could do with anyone. But also, like you said, which a lot of people don't really understand, is Mucken Singh was a great base for the aerial moves, so it allowed him to do more with them than if he was working with a smaller guy.
It was funny because there's two moves. When I first went to wrestling school and I met Lance Storm, well, the one move, I used to do it with Fabuloso Blondie, Ken Timms. You remember him, Fabuloso Blondie?
Oh, yeah.
In
sure,
Mexico.
from Mexico.
And a direct ripoff from an Owen Hart spot where Mucken Singh bent over for a backdrop. And this is not wrestler exaggeration. You can see this. Owen jumped up onto his back and did a backflip off of Mucken Singh while he was bent over to give him a backdrop. And it's like, there's no rhyme or reason for why you would do it, but it was so damn cool that it's like, I got this idea, Fabuloso Blondie. And then the other one that me and Lance used to do all the time, we called it the Owen Hart bum flip, in that you would take each other's hands as if you're going to do like a test of strength, but you only have one side, and you would run with, let's say I was giving it to Owen, I would run, Owen would jump straight up into the top rope, kick his legs out, land on like his hamstrings, do a backflip over back into the ring, and then give you an arm drag, or like a kind of an arm drag, Mexican arm drag. And it was like the most incredible thing you'd ever seen at that point in time. I'd never seen anything like this before.
That was the one move when he did the first WWE run that he did in every match, and it was the one spot that always got over because nobody in the United States had ever seen it. And it was just like, you know, it was like, Phoenix does that move now, but it's you know, again, it's a lot more common, and we're 20 years later. But yeah, the first time, that's when he was the original Blue Blazer. I mean, he got over in a lot of the arenas real big, with no television. Just because he did, you know, that would be the first move, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we don't know this guy, but he must be talented as hell. And then the rest of the match, you know, he would throw in more stuff like that. So yeah, when he had his first run off television, just going to the arenas, he got over, you know, really, really big. Him and Warrior came at the same time, and they got over for different reasons before they were ever even on TV.
You know, it's interesting because I used to go to the arenas every month as a fan, obviously, to watch the shows. And I remember this because I was such a big Owen Hart fan. You would never really know what the card was. And you'd be waiting to see this guy come out with a mask. He's called the Blue Blazer. And the one thing I noticed is Stampede Wrestling guys always had lightning bolts down the side of their trunks and 3 stars on the ass of the trunks. And I remember seeing a guy walk down there, and it's like, he's built like Owen. He's got blonde hair hanging out of the back, and he's got the Stampede tights. And then when he did the bum flip, I said to my friend, I said, dude, that's Owen Hart. What do you mean it's Owen Hart? I don't know how he got here. That's Owen Hart. He's Owen Hart on the best. Then I went to the hotel afterwards, and lo and behold, Owen and Brett walked in at the same time. And I remember us being so so like, I can't believe I figured it out. You know, I was so proud of myself for figuring out the kayfabe. But tell us how did he end up going to the WWE the first time, and why did they just put him on TV, or why they just put him on house shows rather than give him a TV chance?
You know, I don't know. I mean, like the word about, you know, he'd done well in Japan, the word was out. And he did a tryout match with them against Hercules Hernandez in North Carolina. And he got over bigger than anyone who'd done a tryout match in like a year. So he was offered a deal at that point. And his name was pretty big. Like he was, you know, the newsletters and the magazines. So, you know, everyone talked about him like he was, you know, going to be the next big star in the business. So he got signed. He did the Blue Blazer thing, just worked prelims. I think they were just waiting, you know, to do something with him on TV. And then for whatever reason, he got over at the house shows with no TV, and he just wasn't their pick. I don't even know how to say it. I mean, I'll tell you the story, and almost no one knows this story. So KTVU, which is like one of the leading independent channels in the United States, and it was their San Francisco channel. So one of the reporters there was a big Owen Hart fan from reading my newsletter and you know, and then, you know, seeing the videos from Stampede Wrestling and things like that. So he went to WWE, and you know, at this time, the idea that a station like that, the sports department, would do a feature on a pro wrestler, even Hulk Hogan, was, you know, very, very rare. And he went to WWE and just goes, I want to do something on the Blue Blazer, you know, just do something on him because he's so cool and this and that. And they told him, they go like, we're not promoting him. I mean, it was actually like the kind of publicity they could never get, and it was a no. And that was like, oh boy, this. I never thought that like WWE, like that was the first time I had heard, because he just goes like, I went there. They just said, no, he's not a guy we're promoting. And I was like, wow. I thought that like, you know, that kind of stuff would help get you over, and instead it's almost like we've got our guys we want on TV, like Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, and we're not looking for this for this guy. So at that point, I even kind of thought, he's not in their plans. He must not be in their plans. And then once he got on TV, they didn't really do much with him. And then he got hurt in a match with Greg Valentine, and he was out for a while. And when he came back, they'd moved on. And he was really frustrated. He was super frustrated there, you know, and he ended up quitting. I would have been in the Bay Area, because I was actually out with him. One of my friends at the time, who was a doctor, who was a physician in attendance at ringside when the commissions would you know, have that in the California shows. And he, you know, he was like one of my best friends, and we watched Owen Hart tapes all the time. So when he got to meet Owen Hart, it was like, he was more thrilled to meet Owen Hart than he was, like, I mean, literally anybody on that roster, Hulk Hogan, I don't care. And he wasn't like a big fan of wrestling, but he was a big fan of Owen Hart. So when he met Owen Hart, when Owen Hart was first coming to the Bay Area there, they hit it off really big. So he just goes, hey, you know, let's just go to the matches, and we'll meet Owen and everything like that. So like we met him, and that was the night he had actually when we met him, he just got off the phone with this long conversation with his dad, telling his dad that, you know, he's going to quit. And he just goes, yeah, I'm quitting. You know, I'm going to go back to Japan. You know, and he's joking about it, you know, like, you know, he just felt that the thing didn't work. You know, was going to go back to Stampede Wrestling in Japan. He was happier there. I mean, he used to, when he worked WWE, WWF, I don't think too many people know this, but he would, on his days off, when he was in Calgary, he would go to like the Spot show in, you know, Red Deer, Alberta, you know, and then because you didn't have an internet, you could do this and nobody would know. And he would go out there and work like a 30-minute match as Owen Hart in these small towns just to make him happy, you know what I mean? While he's under contract with WWF, when he's certainly not supposed to be doing anything like this.
Wow. Even like you said, times were different back then, and you could do that, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah. I mean, it's amazing, because you would think that like it would somehow come out, but it never did. Like, I didn't even know about it until, you know, it was like a discussion with him. In fact, it was that night where he was just telling me, you know, I'm not that happy. And he goes, you know, you don't know this, but I would, on my days off, I would, you know, go to the small town and just, as long I wanted to work a 30-minute match just to make me happy, because I, you know, just to have that satisfaction of being, you know, in a main event and doing the style that I like to do. So, you know, when people say he didn't like wrestling, I know that's bullshit. And you know it's bullshit, too, because nobody gets that good in wrestling if they don't like it. Right. But, you know, like anyone with talent where you're not being used, there's going to be that natural frustration. And he had that on the first run there for sure.
Well, especially when you know you could do so much more. That's the thing.
Right.
There's another match I want to ask you about, Dave. It's one that you were at. Mick Foley and Owen were deliberately trying to have a bad match so that you would rate them negative stars because they knew you were in the crowd. I want to talk about that, but after first I want to tell everyone about this new product that works wonders on pain. It's called CBD. I know, I can hear what you're thinking, and believe me, I was skeptical as well. But then I discovered CBD Lion, and this company is focused on quality. They are legit. All of their products are tested in a third-party lab to ensure potency and purity. They're also made in real ISO 7 labs, which is a fancy way of saying a real clean room laboratory. They're not made in someone else's kitchen or garage. CBD Lion sent me some of their products. I got gummies, a couple of the tinctures, and their lotion. The tinctures range from 250 milligrams to 5,000 milligrams. The gummies are 25 milligrams of CBD and come in orange, raspberry, and strawberry flavors. But the lotion, that's my favorite, and the product I've been using the most to help me recover from all the MMA training I've been doing lately to get ready for tomorrow's big Double or Nothing event in Las Vegas. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Look out, Kenny Omega. I'm coming for you, baby, and I'm ready. Anyway, a CBD Lion lotion has been great for targeting spots of pain as well, from sore muscles and things like that after workouts. You just rub it right where it hurts, and the pain pretty much disappears. The lotion comes in 300 and 900 milligrams potency. I'm using the 900 milligrams, and this stuff really works. All of the CBD products I'm using from CBD Lion are 0 THC. There's no THC in them. So if you're looking for natural pain remedies or maybe something to help with insomnia, give CBD Lion a try. Go to cbdlion.com and use my promo code Jericho. You'll get 20% off your order. That's cbdlion.com and use the promo code Jericho to get 20% off. That's cbdlion, like the animal.com. Stop thinking about it and just go do it. cbdlion.com, use my promo code Jericho and get 20% off your order and go do it now.
Brett, you got lucky, but you're gonna need more than luck, because I was more than lucky. I was better than you, and I beat you, brother. And when we fight, and believe me, we'll fight again, it'll be for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. And when I beat you, I'll be the world champion, brother.
Let me ask you a quick question. Tell me this is true. You remind me of something about being at a live Owen Hart match. Did Mick Foley and Owen one time go to the ring at a San Jose show or wherever where you were there and intentionally try to
San Jose show.
intentionally try to have a dud? Tell us the story.
The story I heard later from Mick was they knew I was there and they wanted to have like the worst match possible, like a negative star match, just for their own fun. And okay, so here's the thing. Like, I didn't know that they were doing this. I did watch the match and go, they took bags of popcorn and they would hit each other with bags of popcorn and sell it like crazy. And it was absolutely preposterous. But it also got over, and also, even those guys trying to be bad,
Exactly.
like they were still like it really wasn't like what I would call a bad, it was a ridiculous match.
Right.
You know, it's like watching two guys do a comedy match, but they're talented guys. Like, it really wasn't anything resembling like a negative star horrible match. It was just this, you know, it was a comedy match that got over with the crowd. And I remember the way I heard the story, I think Mick wrote it, they went to the back, and Austin was just like, oh, that was the worst piece of shit match. And they were just happy that Austin said it, because, you know, they didn't care about that point. If Austin said it was terrible, that's good enough for us. Who cares what Dave says?
Well, that was my question. Guys like that, even when they want to be bad, they don't know how to be bad. It's still going to be ridiculous and funny, right?
But yeah, no, I remember them completely overselling, hitting each other with bags of popcorn, going like, this is so ridiculous.
Well, that was one thing about Owen, is he was famous for having a great sense of humor and being one of those guys, much like Kurt Hennig, that came from the generation of you had to rib everybody, but their ribs were fun ribs, not
But
like
his were funny, not like malicious at all, ever.
right, like not put Crisco on the stairs so when guys walk down the stairs they slip and fall and, you know, possibly die. Owen was more of a. Did you ever hear any Owen ribs, or were you ever a part of any?
Didn't he like get a horse in the hotel or something once?
I don't know if I heard that one or if it was something where in Vince's office he put a bunch of livestock and farm animals in
That's
there.
what it must have been. Yeah. Like at one of the shows where Vince was at, and he got like all these farm animals. Yeah, stuff like that, and just a lot of. I mean, I remember the phone call stuff. You know, where he would call people up and pretend to be other people, and he would do it to his dad all the time. You know, where he'd call his dad up and pretend to be somebody else, and, you know, like that.
He called his dad up as Reg Parks, the old school wrestler who's now a belt maker, and and was was telling him he could beat him in a shoot. And Brett tells us that, "Well, if you think you're so tough, Reg, why don't you come try me?"
I got to tell you this story because when you brought up me doing the show, this story flashed in my head. It's a Stu story, but it's about Owen and Brett too. So this is in Amarillo, Texas. It had to be around '97. People could look this up. It was Brett wrestled Terry Funk in Terry Funk's retirement match in Amarillo. It's like Terry's telling me, like, you know, this is it. I'm retiring for the, you know, 13th time out of 60.
Yeah.
But but he wanted to work with Brett. And the funny part is that they had this big argument because both demanded to lose, but since it was Terry's show, he got to lose. Brett's like, no, it's your retirement match in Amarillo. And Brett's WWF champion at the time, but it's a non-title match. So it's your retirement match. It's your, you know, in your city. I want to lose this match. And Terry's like, no. When you have your last match, you go out on your back because that's how he was taught.
Right.
You lose in your retirement match. That was the mentality of guys from his generation. So they're fighting over this. This has nothing to do with that. So I'm ending up somewhere, you know, in the hotel, and it's me, Pat Patterson, and Stu. And we're just talking, and this would have been right before Owen started in WWF. Owen was still in Stampede Wrestling at the time. And somehow I brought up, hey, you know, Stu's son Owen, he's like awesome. Well, I think I didn't say, you know what, I didn't say son. I mean, I said son, but I didn't say Owen. I go, you know, Stu's son is freaking awesome. And Pat goes, you know, I know Brett. Brett's one of my favorites, right? And I go, you know, well, you should see his son Owen. I was actually talking about Owen because I've been watching all those Stampede tapes. You should see Owen. And so, like, then we talk, and I'd say 3 to 5 minutes later, all of a sudden Stu, who hasn't said a word while I'm talking to Patterson about God only knows what, just goes, that's interesting. I've got a son named Owen. You know, like, we were talking about this Owen, and he goes, I got a son named Owen. Then about 2 minutes later, when we're still on the subject, he goes, you know what? I've got a son named Brett, too. Like that. So it gets better. So then, you know, maybe 30 seconds later, you know, he's piping up, and he's talking about his son Owen, who Pat, you know, may have heard of, but, you know, has never seen. He just goes, you know, I think my son Owen is like the second best high flyer in the whole world right now. You know, behind that guy in Japan. What's his name? Sayama. And I go, Stu, Sayama's retired. And then Stu perks up and goes, well, that means my son's the best high flyer in the whole world.
Well, the thing is, he might have well have been, like I said, because he was such a revolutionary and a pioneer doing all these moves. But you mentioned when he quit. I know there was a short little time when he was gone, but what kind of really started that WWE push that made him into, you know, a legit main event draw?
That was Brett. So Pat came up with the idea.
Because Owen had been back for a few years, and he was teaming with Neidhart, teaming with Coco Beware, and just basically doing nothing, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, he was getting to show more than the first run, but he was just kind of on cruise control. Not a star. I remember they did like when he teamed with Coco Ware, and he's flapping his wings. And I saw him one night, you know, in the Bay Area, and he's like just joking, and he just goes like, yeah, I forget, he was talking to some wrestler, and he just goes, yeah, you know, it's like so humiliating. You can be like this really good wrestler, and then you come to WWE, and you go out there in front of 10,000 people, and you're flapping your arms like this. He goes, God, you know, like he was like making just jokes about his plight with the company. So,
right.
So Pat Patterson comes up with this Cain and Abel story, you know, because and Pat knows Bruce. So the idea was for Bruce to be jealous of Brett and, you know, come up with this big program where the brothers fight the brothers. And it's a takeoff on Bruno and Zbyszko, because Pat was there when they did the Bruno Zbyszko. And really, the Brett Owen angle was very similar, you know, where it was months where the non-star, Zbyszko, you know, wants the match to prove something. And then when he finally gets the match, he turns on him and bloodies him up and all that. You know, where the other guy doesn't want it because he loves him like a son, and in this case, like a brother. And so they go to Brett with the idea, and Brett goes, I don't want to do it with Bruce, you know, which led to, you know, problems with him and Bruce for years. I don't want to do it with Bruce. It won't work with Bruce. It'll work with Owen. And they're going like, Owen, you know, they envisioned Owen as a guy who could not be a heel. And it's like, he can't be a heel. And it's like, trust me, I'll make it work. You know, I'll do it with Owen. So, Owen got the spot, and that's really where Owen became a big star in WWF, and Bret put him over at that WrestleMania. And that, in those days, I mean, it's one of those funny things where it doesn't happen now, but in those days, all you had to do is beat Bret Hart at a pay-per-view and snap your fingers. You're a star. And they went and they did the whole summer. They did really good business. So the business wasn't the greatest by standards of the Hulk Hogan era, but for that era, the Bret Owen stuff drew very, very well. They went to every city because Bret won the championship on the same night that he lost to Owen. Owen beats Bret in the opening match of the show, and then Bret comes back in the main event and beats Yokozuna and wins the WWF Championship. So you've got the natural Bret Owen match to run all summer long, and it drew because everyone had seen Owen beat Bret in a classic match with no cheating, which was the other thing. It's like, I'm sure that's Bret's insistence to, put Owen over at that level, and then they did the matches all summer long and did really well. And I think that was probably his biggest, without a doubt, that was his biggest singles run ever, was that thing. But it at least got him to where, from that point on, he could be tag team champion, intercontinental champion. He could be different, he had a lot more credibility coming from the WrestleMania win over Bret.
Well, you also got to see his personality, too. He's one of those guys, I think, a lot like I was at basically the same point in time, that you're earmarked as, okay, it's a blonde-haired guy, good-looking guy, high flyer, but yeah, he'll never be a heel. But then when given a chance, you just grab the mic and run with it. And Owen was so good at that. And you mentioned something that was very, very, very true and very relevant in that Bret, when you beat Bret, like when Owen beat Bret, it was so huge. I can even remember the finish. And I've seen 10,000 matches and remember hardly any of them, but I still remember Bret went for the victory roll and Owen just stopped him halfway through and got him for 1, 2, 3, right?
Right. And the other thing is like, honest to God, I think that's one of the best matches in WrestleMania history.
I agree. People forget about that one because it's the same night as Shawn and Razor's ladder match. But take the ladder out of the equation, Bret and Owen was a way better match.
As a wrestling match, it was a better match, but Shawn and Razor, the thing with that match was, at that point in time, and you'll remember this.
Yes.
That was a revolutionary match just because, there's been ladder matches, but none as spectacular and none as, there's a lot of new stuff. Whereas if you watch, I would guess if you watched both matches today now, they would both be fantastic matches, but you would say Bret and Owen was the better match. But on that night, Shawn and Razor was so spectacular because it was so new that I don't want to say it overshadowed it because everyone knew Bret and Owen was a fantastic match too, but it probably would have gotten more attention if you didn't have another match that good on the same show.
Well, and like you said, that match that no one had ever really seen with the ladder match, because it's as crazy as it seems, back at that time, like you said, I think there was one ladder match on a Coliseum video that you could rent at a movie store, but other than that, no one had really seen a ladder match on that big stage. And Shawn was at the peak of his powers as well, just being this awesome creative bump machine. So I think you're right, though, they do forget about Owen, but also too, it was such a great caveat because I could just be imagining this, but I don't think so. After Bret beats Yokozuna, you see Owen again. And he's just got this look on his face that even in beating his older brother, he's still in the shadow of his older brother when the show is over. He still couldn't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was a great idea for a storyline. Because it made perfect sense all the way through. And again, Bret spent months. One of the reasons why it was so big is Bret spent months turning down the challenge and refusing to wrestle him, even though Owen was doing everything, including costing him the title with Bob Backlund a couple of months earlier. Owen was doing everything to screw with him.
Just great storytelling too, and not to harp on anything, is we don't need to go there, but those times of these 3-month, 4-month, 5-month slow builds are so few and far between, and they shouldn't be. But I forgot about that. Bret refused to do the match. And Stu and Helen were, don't do it. You can't fight your brother. And finally he did. So you were waiting for it and hoping to see the match before you ever got it, which just made it that much more special when it went down.
But you or me or anyone could understand Bret's motivation. It's like it was real motivation. It's like, do you really want to fight your brother?
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, even though your brother wants to fight you, do you really want to fight your brother? Especially not, play fight, but like, in Madison Square Garden fight, right?
Yeah.
So it's like even though Owen was the heel and he was doing everything wrong, you could, in your mind, it's like it held water because like Owen's really talented, but he's kind of gotten nowhere. And Brett's like, you know, the biggest star, one of the 2 or 3 biggest stars in the company. And you could see where Owen's coming from, but you could see where Brett's coming from. Owen was the heel in doing it, but you understood his motivation, and Brett was kind of like the, you know, what the babyface would do. You know, it's like, I don't want to fight my little brother, you know, like type of thing. Until he was like basically forced into accepting the match, and then at the point, and you know, like everyone, because Brett was a big star and Owen was a mid-carder, when they did the match, everybody just, it was the opening match on the show, and everyone just figured, you know, Bret Hart's not losing the opening match on the show. He's coming back for, you know, the main event, right? So, and then he lost, and that's why I think that magnified the value of that win.
I just wanted to mention this too, because I was actually I remember watching that. I was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling at the time, and we went to some, I don't know, some kind of like sports bar or something that was showing WrestleMania. Me and Lance and Chris Candido and Tammy, and then that's also when Brian Lee was there. And then he went to WWE to kind of be the evil Undertaker, the fake, they called him the Faker Taker.
Right, for the SummerSlam that year.
And that was the double main event with Brett versus Owen. Now they had...
Oh, the cage match, yeah.
And I'm actually reading here, I have it on Wikipedia, that says you gave it a 5-star rating.
Oh, the Brett Owen cage match. That match was one of the best cage matches I'd ever seen up to that point in time. Although they went so long. Some people thought they went too long, but I just loved the fact that they teased that both guys could win so often. I loved that match, yeah.
Well, the fact that you gave it 5 stars back in 1995 or whatever it was, you know, nowadays they're much easier to come by, but that was like a once in a, you know, 3 or 4 month span that you'd get one of those. Never mind in the States. Usually you might get a few in Japan.
Yeah,
but...
yeah, like Sean and Razor probably was the previous one. I'll bet you there wasn't one between, you know, I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but I mean, I remember Sean and Razor, and I gave Brett and Owen 4 3/4. Only because whatever. You could have given that one 5 too, honestly.
Sure.
And then, but the Brett and Owen, yeah, the cage match in Chicago, yeah.
But I remember that you mentioned the cage going too long, or long, shall we say. Did that cause some problems with Taker? Because I remember Taker versus Faker Taker was very fast.
They were second to the last, and Taker and Brian Lee were last, and Taker and Brian Lee had a real short match because Brett and Owen went way long. Yeah, that happened.
I wonder if was there any issue? Did you ever hear any heat about that from Taker's side?
I think that there was a little bit, but it was one of those things where when it was over, it was kind of like Brett and Owen's match was so great and Taker and Brian Lee's match was so not great that you kind of like look in hindsight and go, well, I guess it turned out okay, even though, yeah, you're taking time off of the main event, but that main event wasn't, you know, the Taker-Brian Lee thing just didn't get over. It really didn't. So I guess that's kind of how it was looked at is, well, in hindsight, it ended up being better, but yeah, maybe you shouldn't have done that. I mean, the rule of thumb is just you don't go whatever it is. I forget how many minutes long, but it was a significant amount of time long. It could have been like 7 to 10 minutes.
I remember one time I went long for some match, and it was a really good one. And that's why you go long sometimes when you got it, you know. And I remember Vince said to me, he said, if you ever go that long on one of my shows again, it better be as good as that last match was.
Oh, wow, that's great.
You know, it's
that's great.
So when Owen and Brett were kind of done, that you mentioned Owen, then he went and became like a kind of a seminal tag team guy with Yokozuna and Davey Boy Smith. Did Vince just not see him as a singles main event heel on his own if Brett wasn't involved?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was one of those things where he was good, but, you know, again, he wasn't big, and you had like all those big guys still, you know? So I think that, and especially on the heel side, maybe he didn't like smaller heels. And, you know, again, there was like, even like, again, someone who I was very friendly with Owen, it was like, in my mind watching the time, I never saw Owen as like that big heel threat. I mean, with Brett, yes, but afterwards it was kind of like, well, this is his role. You know, because he didn't have a lot of guys he could work with after Brett that were that good. You know, like if it would have been 4 years later when that influx of great talent came in, I think that like when I remember, you know, like when I would think back and go, well, God, he could have worked like on top or intercontinental level with all of these guys for 5 years straight, going through one after the other, and it would be, you know, he would be like, you know, a Steamboat level guy for years and years and years. That was when I was thought of. You know, it could have happened. It just, you know, unfortunately, because what happened, it never happened.
Well, like you said, there wasn't a lot of those type of guys to work with, too. But he was always one of those guys, like I even thought about it, you know, at length after he passed away. And he always had a spot. He was one of those guys that would always be, I guess you'd call him a featured member of the roster. Maybe not a main eventer, but always had something going on.
Yeah, well, he was a great talent, and you know they used Cornette with him to manage him because Cornette was a great talker for a while, and you know him and Davey. Like, look, him and Davey were a great tag team.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, remember was it him and Davey against was it Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels on Raw?
Yes.
I think that was the match where Shawn had come back from the knee injury and he was just on fire. Oh my God! I mean, I remember that. Yeah, you know, he when he was in there with top guys. You know, he was there, and again, you know, one of the things, you know, with the Shawn thing, you know, there's, in 97, so Bret has the big falling out with Vince, Survivor Series and all that, and Owen, you know, that becomes a real weird thing because, okay, they did this to your brother, but you're under, like, a long-term contract at the same time. Now, Davey's furious, he just wants out, and they let Davey go. And Owen, I don't know that Owen was furious, and I don't know, but he was torn, because it's like, you know how adamant Bret was, how furious Bret was over it. And even though Eric Bischoff will say the opposite, because he would always go, oh, we never wanted Owen. And it's like, yeah, tell me
bullshit.
that. Like, I'm going to believe you didn't want Owen. Like, you know, even though Owen Hart wasn't top guy in WWE, it's like you just said, he's a guy that any promotion would want because you can count on him for any role, and he's always going to be good. And plus, with the talent that they had in WCW in, like, 98, come on. I mean, Owen Hart would have been, you know, just great in that role, but you know Vince wasn't, you know, for that reason Vince wasn't going to let him go. I think Vince thought that Davey was whatever it was, you know, I maybe more problems, maybe more bitter, because Owen wasn't bitter at the time. So he gives Owen the big raise, and I remember the big pitch to him was, you're going to beat Shawn Michaels and you're going to be the star. You know, Bret was the Canadian star. That's what their mentality was. He's the Canadian star. Owen is going to be the Canadian star, and we're going to market him as the guy who he's younger than Bret. More high-flying than Bret, whatever. He's the new Bret Hart, the new Canadian star, while Bret went to WCW. And the way to do that was to have him beat Shawn, who had all that heat from the Canadians because of the Bret Hart thing. So it made, like, perfect sense. And then Shawn breaks his back immediately, and they never do the program. And then Owen just flitters out, you know, and does nothing again.
Is that what happened? Shawn broke his back? Because I remember when he came back on Raw. And once again, now I'm in WCW. I'm in the thick of all this. And he came back. He had like a beard. He was wearing like this black tracksuit. He attacked Shawn from behind and beat the shit out of him. And
Right,
it was like,
except the Shawn and Shamrock match maybe, but I just remember the attack, yeah, at the announcer's table.
he's right there. It's like it doesn't matter what he was before. As we know, this business is all timing. Now, like you said, he's avenging not just Shawn Michaels, but the evil empire of the McMahons. And you know he's got the personality to do it, and he's got the fans behind him. I could never figure out why they didn't go all the way with that.
I mean, they did, and then they just dropped it. You know, they did some stuff with him and Hunter, and
Yeah.
it was weird. I remember, because as a fan watching it, like the scripting of the interviews, it was like Hunter always got the last word on him, so it kind of made Owen kind of uncool, and I could just feel watching it that it's like, it's just, he's not going to get over the way they want because they were making him, you know, just be not cool enough, and he had to be this cool avenging angel thing, and then after that, you know, they ended up with teaming with Jeff Jarrett, which was fine. They were a good team, but it was not the feud with Shawn Michaels, you know, over it was going to be the European Championship because Shawn had the European title, because Steve Austin was going to be the WWF champion. But Shawn then Shawn just dropped the European title. This is before he got hurt, and I thought almost like, he's dropping the European title to get out of this feud with Owen. I can just smell it, right? And then they did this thing, and then Shawn got hurt. So it's like, I always say, like, I'll never know if Shawn was going to put him over on all those pay-per-views like they told him, and they even told me. It's like, you know, we're going to make Owen into the next Bret Hart. He's going to beat Shawn on a pay-per-view, and as soon as he beats Shawn, you know, he's a made man. And like I said, like, it was going to be after WrestleMania because he had to lose to Austin first. So I'll never know if it would have happened or not, you know, but that's what was planned at the time.
But Dave, either you know, Shawn and Hunter, let's face it, they were a united front. Either they would put Owen over to the most of their abilities just to spite Bret, or they would sandbag it and sabotage it just to spite Bret.
I thought it was the latter. Yeah. I strongly thought, watching the TV that was building all this up, because I knew where they were going, that it was the latter, that it was, we're going to make him out to be, you know, less whatever, and so they're not going to go in this direction after WrestleMania after all. because by the time they got to WrestleMania, you know, I knew Shawn was hurt, and I knew he would be out for a while. I didn't know it was going to be 4 years. But I was completely convinced by then, you know, by WrestleMania, that Owen was never getting that push.
Okay, speaking of wrestling injuries, let's talk about two things. Steve Austin and Owen Hart had a lot of issues between each other for an injury that Steve suffered. And also Diamond Dallas Page and his DDPY program. Let's hit DDPY first, because Dallas's program saved my wrestling career. Everyone knows that story, how I was told I had to have back surgery by 3 different doctors, told maybe I would never wrestle again, told never to do a lion salt again. I was doing acupuncture. I took a picture of it, and Dallas called me because I had posted it on my Twitter and said, you have to try this yoga program. And not only did I no longer have to have back surgery, I've since gone on to have some of the best matches of my career, an extra decade of quality. And I'm looking forward to having another one of those matches tomorrow against Kenny Omega at Double or Nothing in Vegas. And after I beat Kenny, I will be doing DDPY to help me recover from the match, I'm sure. And you should be doing DDPY as well. In fact, Dallas is so sure of that he's giving you 7 days of free access to the DDPY Now app. You get to try everything for free for 7 days. There's over 100 workouts on the app, nutrition tips, recipes, ways to track your progress, including the ability to connect a Bluetooth heart rate monitor. There's live workouts from the DDPY Center in Smyrna, Georgia, and there's even a little personal motivation from Dallas himself. All you got to do is download the DDPY Now app. There's one for iOS and for Android, and then you get started. DDPY is the program you've been looking for. It's going to help get you on the path to healthier living and keep you there. So take advantage of the 7-day free trial of the DDPY Now app and give Dallas's life-changing program a solid 1-week try. Own your life for free. Get started at ddpyoga.com/Jericho and pick up Dallas's book to help you get started now. It's called Positively Unstoppable, The Art of Owning It, and it's filled with lessons from Dallas's own life and times. You can get it wherever books are sold, and you're going to learn a whole lot about Dallas and his theories and how you can stay healthy forever. Let Dallas and DDPY change your life. Get in the best physical and mental shape you've ever been in. Start today at ddpyoga.com/Jericho.
What about the 8-man tag team war? Shawn Michaels, Triple H, and the New Age Outlaws take on Stone Cold, Cactus Jack, Chainsaw Charlie, and Owen Hart.
You know, this whole thing started off as just a personal issue between me and Degeneration X. That's right, you Hunter and Shawn Michaels in China. But it's become a whole lot more personal. And to give you an idea of how bad I want you at No Way Out of Texas, I got some lunatics in my corner. Real lunatics. I got Cactus Jack, Mankind, I don't know what the hell his name is, Terry Funk, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, a guy that I can't even trust in my corner. Well, the New Age Outlaws and Degeneration X, that's how bad I want all of you. And when I get you in Houston, Texas, I am going to destroy you, because there is no way out. And I got 3 lunatics in my corner that want you equally as bad. Now, this has been building up. Every week, you guys are poking your nose in our business. And we're letting it all build up. We're saving it all. Because when we get to Houston, Texas, there is no way out. And we are going to get the job done.
Let's talk quickly about what happened with Steve and Owen. You mentioned Steve Austin. They had a little bit of an issue as well, or a big issue.
Big issue, yeah, because Owen dropped him with that version of a pile driver, sit-out pile driver, and broke Austin's neck, you know, which really ended Austin's career, and without a doubt shortened his career greatly, because he only wrestled a couple more years. And the way I remember it is that Owen never checked on him, and he was always told to check on him. And Owen wasn't a bad guy, so I almost think that I don't know if he didn't know what to say or whatever, but Austin was very bitter at him for years, and I can get it from the Austin standpoint, in the sense that, okay, it was an accident, obviously. And the thing is, Owen suggested the move. Austin was trepidatious about doing the move, and Owen was like, I pulled this move off a million times, you got nothing to worry about. And then he ends up nearly ending the guy's career. And he never calls. And it's like, so I could see from an Austin standpoint, you know, that's a tough one. He should have called, and there's no explanation, but yeah, he never did.
Yeah, and if I recall, the way that Owen gave him the pile driver too was almost backwards. And what I'm saying is, like, if you think of like a tombstone pile driver, the way that I'm just watching right now. Yep, exactly. Okay, so when you're doing a tombstone pile driver, like the way Undertaker does, for people that don't know, you pick the guy up and you go down on your knees. That's way number one, where the guy's face is almost like in your crotch. Number two is if the guy's bent over like a backdrop, you pick him up to where his face is facing outwards, you fall down onto your ass. Those are the two ways to do a pile driver. I just watched it right now. Owen picks him up like a tombstone pile driver and falls down onto his ass. I've never seen a pile driver like that, nor have I taken one like that before. I don't know why he did it that way. It's very strange.
I had seen him do that move, but very rarely.
Right.
I'd seen that move in Japan. God, but like, not, you know what? Not even that exact move. I remember the Steiner move. Scott Steiner did a move in Japan that every time I saw it used to scare me to death. The Steiner square driver, which he rarely did in the United States, but he did in New Japan almost all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess nobody got hurt, but that's what it sort of reminded me of. But yeah, it was not a typical normal move. But, you know, they were in an Intercontinental title match on a pay-per-view, and I think in their minds, you know, they were looking to have like a killer match. And they were having a great match until they had to, you know, and then they had to botch the ending, and Owen had to basically hit himself because Austin was paralyzed, which actually takes a lot of talent when you think about it. Because, you know, at the time watching, it's like, you know, this looks kind of bad. But in hindsight, it's like, you know, Owen literally, like, cradled, you know, fell over, tripped over him to allow Austin to touch him, to cradle him, to get a pin, because Owen knew Austin was being groomed for big things, and Austin had to win that match. I mean, so, I mean, he, you know, rather than just X and let's get out of here and stop it, they gave the people the finish. And, you know, but yeah, Austin was hurt. And in a weird way, because of that injury and because Austin already was hot, they had to come up with creative ways to book Austin at that point because he couldn't wrestle.
Right.
So every week, but that was a big part because Austin really super got over in January 98 with the Mike Tyson thing, I think, in Fresno, and then just build up to WrestleMania. But I think that period, in its own way, it shortened Austin's career for sure. You know, probably, I'm sure he's still feeling the effects of it today.
Yeah.
But it also, I think, did speed up his getting over. I think he would have anyway, but it forced the creative team of Vince McMahon to get this guy in a special way because he wasn't doing matches. So you had to do all those famous skits that everyone remembers now, and that really made Austin a larger-than-life superstar. It's kind of like a weird, you know, so much in wrestling, you know, is like weird and happenstance. Like, you know, so much of it is planned, but the biggest things, if you look at like, you know, like Hulkamania was 100% planned and all that, right? Steve Austin, even to an extent The Rock, but Steve Austin in particular, it just happened. You know what I mean? It wasn't like,
sure.
You know what I mean? It wasn't like, hey, Steve Austin's coming in from WCW. He's a talented guy.
Yep.
We're going to make him the biggest star in wrestling. It's like nobody had that mentality. It just happened, and it was a series of things. The Brett match at Mania, and then the broken neck causing him to do all this, and you know, voila! In '98, all of a sudden, Steve Austin takes off, and WWF takes off like nobody's business.
Well, I mean, it's, you know, I never would have become the undisputed champion if Triple H hadn't torn his quad. I mean,
right.
Those
Perfect
things
example.
happen. Yeah. You know, as I think about kind of the later years of Owen's career, and you mentioned Austin, and I have to point out, I remember at his tribute when Owen passed away, they had a tribute show, and Steve didn't say anything. He just drank a beer and left the beer in the ring because I think he still had, like you said, those bitter feelings about Owen. But yet they still had probably the last classic match of Owen's career, which was the 5-on-5 at Spring Stampede Calgary match. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the best matches.
Oh, what a great show that was. I mean, that's like when if you guys, you know, this is in '97, in the summer of '97. It was the Calgary Stampede.
Yeah, I think they called it. I think they just called it Calgary Stampede pay-per-view or something like that.
Right. So you should look that up if you've never seen this. This show, it's like a 2.5 hour show. It's not that long, and that main event is fantastic. But the whole show from start to finish. At that point in time, I thought that was the best WWF pay-per-view ever. Up to that point in time, I think there's been better ones since. But because it was so funny because it's like this role reversal thing because to all the Americans watching, I mean, Steve Austin was the super babyface at this point. Brett is the super heel. But they go to Calgary, and you got Brett and Brian Pillman and Owen and Neidhart.
Davey.
And, you know, every one of those guys either was a Calgary native, Davey, or a transplanted Calgary guy who started their career in Calgary. So to the fans in Calgary, these are the super baby faces going against the Americans that are screwing with Brett. And we know that they're supposed to be the heels, but we're going to be behind them. and they were behind them like nobody's business. And you and I talked about this. I mean, Brian Pillman, after that match, just goes, "This was the greatest night of my career."
Yeah.
It was like, and Brian was the one who was hated the idea that they were going to play babyface in Canada. He thought, this is stupid. We've got to be consistent. And then he went up there and was like, "Oh, Brett was right." He goes, "This is the greatest night of my career." And the beautiful part was they could go back to the United States and they were still heels.
And that was the beauty. Exactly. It's actually called Canadian Stampede is when it happened. It's July 1997. I was actually there because I was off that day, and I got in major trouble from Bischoff for going to the WWE pay-per-view because he thought I was trying to get a job, which I was under contract, but I was trying to definitely get my face shown for sure. The first time I ever met Vince McMahon actually was back there. But loudest crowd, one of the loudest crowds I've ever heard in my life for that match.
Yeah. And for the whole show, but especially that match. And that match probably went 30 minutes. And the crowd never lost their energy. I mean, it was on fire the whole match.
Steve got arrested, and he was given the finger as he was in handcuffs, and he was given the finger to Stu Hart. And it was just one of those moments where you just remember all of these really cool things happening. And like you said, because the Hart Foundation was so over, and I liked that version of the Hart Foundation with all 5 of the guys, and they look cool. And like you said, they all had the lineage back to Calgary. It was probably the last, I would say, even to a certain extent, the last great thing that Bret Hart ever did. After all the stuff that happened when he went to WCW, nothing he did ever lived up to that, for sure.
That level, I mean, he did good stuff after, but that was a different level. Yeah, that was a major level of great. Well, that was a couple months. Yeah, because the Bret Austin match would have been March, April. I think WrestleMania was March that year, and then this is July. So yeah.
Let's talk about the Over the Edge pay-per-view and everything that happened that fateful night, the night Owen passed away. But first, a quick word of thanks to O'Reilly Auto Parts. Don't take a chance of being stranded. Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts now and get your battery tested. That's something that you don't think about a lot, but get your battery tested. It's free of charge, and it's one of the many services available at O'Reilly Auto Parts. If your battery needs to be replaced, the professional parts people will help you find the exact battery for your car or truck. O'Reilly Auto Parts, better parts, better service every day. All right, so this special Owen Hart episode of Talk is Jericho is also being sponsored in part by Indeed. When it comes to hiring, you don't have time to waste, do you? You need help getting to your short list of qualified candidates fast. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screener questions, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. And when you need to hire fast, accelerate your results with sponsored jobs. New users can try that for free at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms, conditions, and quality standards apply. Find the employee that you're looking for at Indeed.com/podcast.
The time has come, Shawn Michaels. This weekend in your house in Louisville, Kentucky, you've got to get in the ring with Owen Hart, the man that nearly put you out of business for good last time. And this time, your precious World Wrestling Federation title shot's on the line. We goaded you into doing exactly what we wanted. And now, he's going to go to WrestleMania.
There's no doubt about it, Shawn Michaels. 2 things are going to happen at In Your House. First of all, I am going to end your career like I should have done the first time. And the second one, I'm going to WrestleMania and taking the WWF title.
Let's kind of talk a little bit more as we wind down here about the Over the Edge pay-per-view and kind of the way it was handled and all that sort of stuff, and maybe you have some stories about it. But I remember watching it, and like I said, I'd already decided to leave to go to WWE, and this was in May of, like you said, May 23rd, 1999. I knew that, I think it was August 1st, I was now with WWE, so I was watching WWE to kind of check out the show and see what's going on, and I remember... Blue Blazers on next. He's against the Godfather. I'll check it out. It's probably not going to be great, but I like Owen Hart. And he did kind of a pre-match promo, and then they did some kind of a ring announcement or something. And I remember there was just nothing. There was just crowd shots for about 3 or 4 minutes. And just thinking, like, what's going on here? Like, something's not right. And then, of course, they go over to Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross, very stone-faced, saying that there was an accident and Owen Hart's been taken to the hospital. Were you watching that live like I was?
Oh, of course I was watching it live. So at first, it's WWE, you know what I mean? So I've got the mentality of, what angle is this, right? And then they brought Jeff Jarrett and Deborah in, And Jeff, who was really close friends with Owen, is barely able to talk, and Deborah couldn't, right? She's just crying. And it's like, oh, God, this is like really bad. I mean, immediately, until I saw Jeff and Deborah, I just thought it was an angle. And then when I saw Jeff, and even though I think Jim Ross actually said this is not part of the entertainment, he did some code word where I should have thought that it was real, but it's still WWF, right? Mm-hmm. So, but when I saw Deborah and Jeff, it was like, oh my God, this is like so real. And I remember, Brett was on an airplane, so I called like Marcy, who was Brett's assistant, like immediately. And I go, there's something really bad happened. And I go, and I know it's not an angle. And I think she told me Brett, because Brett was going to do the Jay Leno show. As I recall, Brett was in the air flying to do the Jay Leno show when this is going on, because he lands in Los Angeles to do the Jay Leno show. Because in those days, again, you don't have cell phones and texting. Even now, even if you do, half the time the internet doesn't work when you're on the plane, right? So he lands on the plane, and that's when he finds out what happened. And I remember, and Terry Funk called me right after, and Terry loved Owen Hart.
Right.
Okay, he just loved Owen Hart, and he just goes, "It's an angle." And I go, "Terry, it's not an angle." And Terry says, "It's got to be an angle." It's like this super strong denial.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be an angle. It's got to be an angle. I go, "Terry, I swear, I don't think it's an angle." And then whatever it is, later in the show they come in there and they say Owen Hart died, and it was before they said that, because I actually called Marcy back up. Right, I'm on the phone. I barely am watching the show because the phone's just ringing back and forth. And I call Marcy up. They're about to switch to Lawler, and by this point I'd also heard from someone at the hospital who just kind of said he's not going to make it. But they, and I kind of had this block of, I know he's in bad shape, but I didn't want to think he's not going to make it. But I was.
Nobody dies in wrestling. Yeah.
But they go. I just remember this. I'm on the phone with Marcy Engelstein to give the message to Brett, who's on the flight. And they go to Lawler and Ross, and I look at Ross's face, and I know Ross. And I go, this is before he says a word, I go, "Oh my God, Marcy, Ross is going to tell us that Owen died." And then Ross immediately goes, "I have this horrible news, Owen died." And I just freaked out, you know what I mean? That was basket case the rest of the night. But yeah, I remember that way too well.
I remember the first guy I called about it was Chris Benoit. I don't think Chris was watching it. I think Chris was working somewhere and we're just kind of discussing what had happened. But I remember that and just kind of reading about it right now, is he was supposed to do a thing where the cord that he was coming down on, the wire, the line, stopped 5 feet above the ring or 4 feet above the ring.
You're supposed to be suspended and not being able to get out of the thing or something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So then he finally bungles and stumbles and releases himself and falls 2 feet. Oh, what a buffoon! Which is why he had these apparently very easily to release hooks and harnesses on there.
The snap shackle was a snap release. It was essentially less safe than the one Sting did, because you couldn't do what they wanted to do the way you would do with Sting. It would take too long and it would mess up the timing. So that's why it happened.
Yeah, I mean it's so interesting, once again thinking back on this 20 years later and how much things have changed, and how much, I still remember just the controversy of continuing the show, which we spoke about, but then the controversy of the whole funeral. I remember WWE paid for it all but then
Right.
filmed it all as well and used it as.
Put it on television, even though she didn't want it on television.
Did they even?
There was so much controversy, and I mean, to this day, I'm sure, I haven't talked to Martha Hart in God, I can't even remember how long, but I'm sure that she, and again, sometimes people I try to look at things from her perspective. I know that there's things like locking DVDs where it's I can understand when you're a fan and she doesn't want WWE to do a DVD, but it's her life, you know what I mean? And her life more than even Brett or anyone. Not that Brett was another one, but they were affected. But she had 2 young kids, and this was her guy. She'd been with him for years and years and years, and her life and happiness was taken away from her because of this thing that happened, and it wasn't malicious, but it happened, and she was very, very bitter at Vince. And I get that. Your whole life is just, ruined. She did the best with it. She created the Owen Hart Foundation. She made a great life for herself as much as she could. She never married again. I know that. So she, went to school and got, great education. But, you know, at the same time, it's like, you know, the rest of the Hearts, she separated herself from all of them. So literally those kids, like, never saw their aunts and uncles.
Yeah, or their cousins.
Because of everything that happened afterwards. That part's a real sad story.
It's sad to me because I know I've spoken with Natty about this, and TJ, Natty and TJ, obviously Neidhart, for years, and they've reached out to Oj, who's the son, and you know, I think I understand Martha's point, and I get all that, but to me too, and this is just my opinion. This is obviously means nothing, but as a guy who grew up wanting to get into wrestling because of Owen Hart, I think it's a shame that there's a whole new generation of fans who don't know who this guy is and don't know how brilliant he was and how influential he was as a performer. And I also wonder if his kids might not want to know a little bit about their father from his peers or from people who feel the same way that I do, or fans that feel the same way that I do, because I'm not going to deny such a tragic ending, but when it comes to his life, he was one of the best, especially at that time frame, in the world, one of the best at what he did. And it's just a shame to me that that legacy is kind of being forgotten about among all these other things.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many tragedies. I mean, I remember like the other one that I hated, you know, kind of being, you know, I don't think in the middle. Well, I was in the middle. I can't even say kinda. I was in the middle, you know, when the lawsuit, and some side with Vince and some side with Brett, you know, and who side with Martha, and then, you know, like, you know, because I consider Ross Hart like a really good friend. Mm-hmm. And I know Keith a little bit. Keith was trying to be neutral. You know, Bruce was on the other side. You know, you had the kids like Natty. I don't know if by then she wanted to be a wrestler, but Harry certainly did, you know, even at that young age. You know, this is early 2000s. And it's just the way that thing went down. And, you know, WWE played upon it, you know, without a doubt, that you had the family that needed WWF and the family, you know, the ones who tried to stay neutral. And then you had, you know, Brett, who was very adamant about it, and Martha, who was very adamant about it. And the lawsuit tore the family. And then, you know, Stu and Hart are older, and their kids are fighting with each other over this lawsuit, you know, and they're in their, I guess, 80s probably, right? Stu was born in 1915-ish. This
right,
is,
sure. This is 99, 2000.
Yes, it's like he's like 86, 87. So it's like, you know, that was a real tragedy, the way that whole thing went down. That was just horrible.
Yeah, and like you said, because yeah. Once again, it just bothers me because the thing with about Owen is, and I only ever met him twice.
Really?
Once in an airport.
Wow, I would have thought, you know, just because of where you started and everything that, you know, I mean, I know you got to WWF and he was after he died, but I just would have thought that you were semi-friends with him, so to speak.
I never ran into him in New Japan because he was like, you figure he was in WWE from, you know, 90, 88 or whatever it was, except for those. He was in Mexico for Minez, UWA, which I never was there at the same time. Never ran into him in New Japan, so I saw him once in an airport because I lived in Calgary, obviously, as did the guys. And the one great memory I have is I got to fly from Calgary to Los Angeles. I was on my way to go to Japan. He was on his way for a pay-per-view, and we sat together for the whole flight. And I remember we had a great conversation, talked for the 3 hours. And I think both of us wanted to kind of go to sleep, but we had a really great conversation. And I remember, like, especially then, who flies to a pay-per-view day of the show? And that's what he was doing. He said, Brett's mad at me because if I'm late, I'm in trouble. But he would want to spend as much time at home as he could. And all he had was a little hand carry bag. I said, why is that? He said, because when I get home, I don't want to wait for my bags. I just want to go straight through customs and go home.
Wow.
You know, and the one advice he gave me that I still use to this day, and this was back in 1994, was we were talking about being late for the airport and about how much stress there is. He said, always get there early. Get there 10, 20 minutes early rather than 5, 10 minutes late. Just get there early, have a coffee, you can relax. And I still always do that. I get to the airport probably 20 minutes earlier than I should, which is early, so I don't have to worry about it, and have that coffee and just thank Owen Hart for the advice.
Wow. and you probably never missed a flight.
Well, you know, you do once in a while, but usually if there's drinking involved. But but the thing about Owen too is he had this whole legion. I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. This whole legion of fans, who once again, because Owen saved as much money as he could. I don't know if he was cheap or whatever, but he would have a fan pick him up, drive him around, and he would stay at their house.
Yep, I know people like that in many cities. Some of my friends were like that, and you know, like that's why, like, when Owen died, it was so hard on so many people, because yeah, Owen's thing was to save on hotel rooms, and he had, I mean, I don't know how many, but I know of a few in different parts of the country where Owen would come to town, and they would just love to hang around with him, and he was always nice. He'd stay at their house, and yeah, just to save, as a way to save money. You know, I'm sure there's like that mixed thing. Like you said, he really liked being home. And wrestling then especially was so hard in the sense of the travel, you know, and the number of days on the road. But, you know, like when people like, I mean, Martha did say like, oh, he was looking to get out. But my mentality always was he was, you know, he was so good. It's like, we'll see guys get out of wrestling. And you did too, but it was, you wanted to go into music or you want to go into acting. You know what I mean? It's like you have something that you want to do. But with Owen, you know, it's like, I think she wanted him to be a fireman. You know, you know the story that at one point she wanted him to be a fireman, so he would be home and have a regular job. And he took, I think Keith was a fireman, but he took, you know, the classes. But whatever reason, he didn't get hired as a fireman. And I always wondered, like, he never would have been happy doing that. I just know. I mean, I don't know him. I never spoke to him about it. But my thought was, you don't get so good at this.
Right.
And I knew him well enough to know that when you would talk wrestling with him, you know how some people, if you talk wrestling, they just want to brush you off.
Yeah.
He was the opposite. You know what I mean? It's like he would love to talk it, and you don't do that unless you love wrestling. You don't get matches that good unless you like think. You know, and guys today don't anyway. But in that era, you know guys were just, I'll do my 8 minutes and not even think about the match, just kind of remote control do it. And he was never that guy. So
I think when he says that he wants to get out of it or whatever, it's probably because of boredom or not being creatively stimulated and fulfilled. I believe that when guys started coming in, like guys from my generation, and you know, Edge and those guys started getting more and more steam, I think Owen would have come out of whatever retirement or whatever sabbatical he was taking. Because once again, let's remember this. We're talking about this guy's career and how much stuff he did. He was only 34 years old. He could have left for 5 years, come back, and still not even been 40 years old. And guys that good don't get worse that quickly. He would have been just as good working with guys that could have pushed him, which would have made him enjoy and love the business once again.
Without a doubt, I would say until the late, you know, yeah, he would have probably had, and I don't know that he would have taken 5 years off. I think that he would have probably had,
sure, whatever it was,
8 to 10 real good years, and then after that, you know, who knows? But yeah. 8 to 10 real good years, and really, aside from the Brett thing, because the Brett thing was real special, I think those 8, you know, the last 5 of those 8 to 10 years, or last 6 of them, would have been the best 6 years of his career.
I agree. Last 2 questions for you, Dave. Do you think he would ever, A, be put into the WWE Hall of Fame from Vince's end, and B, would Martha ever allow that to happen?
Well, that's the thing. I think Vince would do it tomorrow, even with the circumstances and the story. I think, you know, I you know, and Martha, I don't know that she would ever allow it, and that becomes a real, you know, it becomes a real weird thing. That's why the only reason he's not in is because of Martha. You know, Martha really hates the company, hates the idea of them profiting Vincent over Owen's name. That's just her mentality on it. You know, I get where she's coming from. You know, I get the other side. You know, Brett's real strong on that. You know, as far as like Owen should be in the Hall of Fame, he should get that due, and he should. You know, without a doubt. You know, I mean, people of this generation, because again, got 20 years, so you've got a whole giant generation of fans who maybe have heard the name but never saw him in his context, maybe saw a match of his, and you know, guys like you and that grew up watching him, and guys, you know, that from that generation who worked with him and knew him better, you know, it's like there's a lot of great stories, you know, with him, and he deserves to be, he does deserve to be mentioned in that context, you know, as one of the all-time greats, without doubt.
He deserves to get the message, to get that mention. I think his kids deserve to see that and really understand, like, oh wow, my dad really was something. Because as much as it was taken away from them losing him at such a young age. I think to get this kind of a little bit of a closure from it and realize like the business that took my dad's life, he was also really, really good at it, and people really revel him for that skill that he had.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real good point, because I think, especially with what the kids would be, 24 and 22 now, right?
I think so,
Something
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, now you're old enough, and also you're going to be curious enough, because they probably don't remember, because I don't remember anything, when I was 2 years old, and almost nothing when I was 4. And I know Brian Pillman's son, when I met him, I mean, when I talked with him, it's like, he legitimately, I think he remembers nothing about his father. And, obviously, if you watch him, you can see he absolutely idolizes his father, but he has gotten that satisfaction of being around wrestling and being told, over and over and over by wrestlers, I grew up with your father, by his contemporaries of what a, genius his father was. And Owen's kids, I don't think they ever got that. And I know, like, if it was like my dad in that situation, I think that's something that would make I would wish somehow, and I don't know if they do or they don't, but I would wish that they would have that knowledge of, like, hey, your dad was more than just a pro wrestler who died. I mean, your dad was a really, really great pro wrestler, and one that had, like, universal respect. Because, I never heard anyone say anything bad about Owen personally. Everybody liked the guy, good personality, funny guy, you know what I mean? He didn't have a bunch of enemies flying around saying, oh, he's a backstabber and this and that. I mean, he really had a universally tremendous reputation.
Yeah, nobody talks bad about him. And maybe when Vince is gone, maybe Martha will reconsider with Hunter, and maybe they could do some kind of a donation. Any profits from this Hall of Fame that Owen Hart makes, including a portion of ticket sales, will go to Owen's, foundation. I mean, hopefully something like that can happen.
That's a great idea too.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. You know what? Hopefully there can be some compromise on that. And again, from her standpoint, I don't want to say nothing bad about her for obvious reasons, because she had to live through this. But it may be healthier because, it was a horrible thing that happened to her, and I get that. But it's not like, I know that, like, there's a part of her that doesn't like the industry because of it, but it's really not a bad industry per se. You know what I mean? It's just, and it's a great industry, as far as entertainment. It's entertainment to millions and millions, and he was great at it. It's not like a low rent thing. It's just what wrestling is. And from childhood, he probably wanted, it was his life for the whole 34 years, because unlike you and me, he grew up in that house, you know what I mean? So it was like, it was his life from childhood. He didn't like find it at like 9, 10, or 11, and then it became his life. It was his life and the amateur stuff. And he was a great, we didn't even talk about, Owen Hart was a great amateur wrestler. One of the reasons he was in Stampede so young was because the University of Calgary dropped their wrestling program, or he would have been, he could have been a national champion wrestler in Canada, because he did really well on the collegiate level and on the high school level. But, the college dropped the team when he was there.
That was one of Stu's dreams, is he wanted to live vicariously both through Brett and Owen. And Brett,
right, I'm sure Stu wanted Owen to go to the Olympics. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Last question for you, Dave. Which Owen Hart match is your favorite? Is there some that stand out for you?
Wow.
I'll give you one. There was a King of the Ring tournament where Owen fought X-Pac, 1, 2, 3 Kid, and it was a quick, I'd say 3.5 to 4 minute match, but it was a high spot from beginning to end, and it's just tremendous to watch. If you guys haven't seen that, look up Owen Hart versus 1, 2, 3 Kid, King of the Ring, maybe 1994, 95. It's a perfect short match. Like, if you could do a 4-star, 4.5-star, 4-minute match, this is the best way to do it. That's one of my favorites.
So the Brett match at WrestleMania 10.
For sure, absolutely.
And the cage match for sure. There was an Iron Man match with Brett and Owen, and I don't remember the city it was in, and it's not on the WWE Network, but there is a handheld around somewhere, 60-minute match between two of them that was outstanding. There is an Owen Hart Muck and Sing street fight match, and I remember this because one night, me and a bunch of friends of ours, we went to this like bar restaurant, and it was like I think it was a readership thing, and we maybe had 20 readers. This is back in the 80s, and we were just showing tapes of Japan and this, and we showed this Owen Hart Muck and Sing street fight match. It's like I don't remember how long it was, maybe 8 minutes, but like there's all these people in there, you know, and 80% of the people in the place are not wrestling fans, and we're watching these wrestling tapes of really great stuff, right? And they're not paying any attention whatsoever, right? The Owen Hart Muck and Singh street fight, just because of just how dynamic it was, that was the match where I just remember all these people just kind of like, whoa, and they actually started clapping when Owen made his big babyface comeback. You know, we watched, and I mean, there wasn't a match that we would have shown that wasn't like, you know, a 4+ star match. It was like, it was me bringing basically like the last 3 months of highlight tapes from Japan and WWF and WCW, well, Crockett Promotions and Mid-South and everything, and Stampede as well. And that was the one I just remember that like these non-fans were like blown away by, just because, and it wasn't even like the great moves. There was just something about the fire in the crowd. You know, it's like that gritty, you know, small-time crowd but super intense crowd thing.
You can
Owen
see
Hart
it's actually online. I just Googled it. The ropes look like they're about 30 twists too loose. But it's just like you said, so once again, just watching Owen, even so graceful in 1986, was doing stuff that no one else could do.
Yeah, Owen Hart then Bassarab against the Viet Cong Express for its time. Because I remember when they did those matches in Stampede, you know, people who I knew up in Calgary were like, this is like the greatest stuff. They would do 45-minute matches like all the time. Owen Hart, Hiroshi Hase. I mean, when Owen Hart was junior heavyweight in Japan, I think with like Takada and Koshinaka and Hase for sure. And I'm sure Owen and Davey from Berlin. I'm sure there's got to be some great Owen Hart, Shawn Michaels matches. I mean, I can envision them, but I can't like come up with like a date or anything.
They must have worked. I think they worked on a Raw at one point. They must have worked some matches before Shawn got hurt, for sure.
Well, the match where they did the big injury angle with Shawn after he'd like legitimately gotten beaten up in Syracuse, they came back and they were going to do this thing which would lead to, you know, Shawn being out for a couple months with an injury, and it was a match with Owen, and it was a dynamite match where Owen gave him the enziguri, and Shawn went down and he never came up, and they tried to tease you that like Shawn maybe like dead or something.
Yeah.
But that's a great match leading up to it. Owen and Davey against Shawn and Steve Austin, which would be in '97 on a Raw, was for the tag team championship, was a great match. And there's dozens of others, but those ones pop in my head.
Just a great talent, a great performer, and like I said, I don't want him to ever be forgotten as long as I'm involved in the business. So I'm glad we got to do this, Dave, and I appreciate it. And like I said, hopefully he'll get his due in the Hall of Fame one of these days.
Cool. All right, and have a great weekend. This is a big weekend for the business.
I know, man. I appreciate it, Dave. Thanks a lot, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Cheers.
Everybody can relax because the Hart brothers, the Hitman and the Rocket, we are back together. Everything is fine, and we have buried the hatchet. And we have got one thing in mind, and that is to take the Quebecers and win the World Wrestling Federation tag team titles at the Royal Rumble as a family, as brothers. Right, Owen?
That's right. We're going to bury the hatchet. Everything is behind us now. I'm so happy we're back together. It doesn't matter what happened at Survivor Series. It doesn't even matter who was right or wrong. But Quebecers, we're coming after you. We're going to get the gold. We're going to be #1. And Brett, I want you to watch my match tonight when I step into the ring.
Always great to have Dave Meltzer on. And if you don't subscribe to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, you should. He's always got the latest news, great feature stories, and of course, a ton of radio shows and podcasts. Sign up today at
Talk is Jericho, baby. Talk is Jericho. Talk is Jericho, mama. Talk is me.
All right, so I guess a couple months ago, I did a solo show talking about my journey from the WWE to All Elite and kind of how I ended up signing with All Elite Wrestling. And it's so funny because even though that was probably at the beginning of the year, January, February, still haven't had an official match with AEW yet because we haven't had our show. That show obviously happens on Saturday, Double or Nothing at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada. 12,000 tickets sold in just under half an hour. So it seems like we've been waiting forever for this to kick off, but now it's almost here. It's so close, and so many things going on. Obviously, the fact that we just signed with TNT for the weekly show that starts in the fall. The buzz definitely has never been greater. Double or Nothing starts at 8 p.m. Eastern, with the pre-show is dubbed The Buy-In. That leads us into the main card at 7 p.m. You can check all this out through the Bleacher Report live streaming service for $49.99, as well as through traditional pay-per-view for the same price. I believe Fight TV is involved in there as well. It's exciting to actually see this taking off and getting off the ground. You know, because once again, we're starting completely from scratch. This is not something where, you know, there was 30 years of history, for example, like there was with WCW, that used to be, of course, NWA, or the WWE, that was the WWF, that was the WWWF, when Vince McMahon Sr. started the company. I believe Vince McMahon's grandfather, Jess McMahon, had a company going on before that. So we've never seen the actual start of a legit, big-time, big-money organization. And make no mistake about it, you know, there's lots of jokes about us being a t-shirt company and, you know, all these different things. A soda company, if you go on my Instagram, where we have AEW root beer. And you know, now we're actually getting rolling. And I think it's been a long time coming, but there's a lot of detractors and sort of the haters. Haters gonna hate. But they're like, you know, AEW sucks. They'll never get off the ground, and they'll never do this, and they'll never do that. And meanwhile, we have a roster of over 50 talents, some of the greatest performers in the world, and some of the greatest performers in the world that you might not even heard of before. And that's another thing that I love about this. In a world where you have, you know, Brock Lesnar winning a Money in the Bank, or you have Undertaker versus Goldberg, much respect to all those guys, but I think the fact that AEW has basically no cast-offs or retreads, you know, I think the biggest name as far as being a quote-unquote WWE guy is obviously me. I'm the only guy that actually worked in WWE besides Dustin Rhodes and Cody. But I think one of the reasons why it was such a big deal when I signed was it wasn't, you know, here's Jericho, the 19-year WWE vet. It was Jericho who had reinvented himself into one of the hottest properties in wrestling through my work in New Japan. So whether I would have showed up back in New Japan or whether back in WWE, but to go to AEW, it really had a lot of buzz towards it. So if you're thinking about all those things and now combining that with the fact that we have a legit television deal with legit major network, cable network in TNT, TBS, Warner, Time Warner, you know, it just throws everything completely different. It's a completely different world now. And I think, once again, it's very important for this show on Saturday to be one of the best shows ever. I mean, I think that's obviously a pretty big statement, but when you're looking at the old adage of you never get a second chance to make a first impression, I mean, my goodness, this is the case, because I think there's a lot of people who are getting down on AEW because they've heard so much about it, and we haven't even done anything yet. And a lot of that has to do with what's been going on with the WWE lately. And this is not bagging on the WWE, because I love the WWE. I have a great history there and great respect for everybody involved. But you're reading, you know, I'm not talking out of school here, when you're reading the reports online and what critics are thinking and what longtime fans are thinking, like complaining about the booking and some of the booking decisions and some things that don't make sense. And there's a whole kind of a real cloud over the WWE's head at this point, which in turn is giving AEW so much more coverage, and we're not even having to do anything. It's unbelievable when you really think about it. We're just sitting back preparing for our show, where it seems like every week WWE, something happens that people get angry about, and I'm like, this is just great free publicity about, well, you know what, I'm done with WWE. I can't wait for this AEW to start. So I think it's almost a little bit of a blessing that it has been. You know, when did I announce? I announced, I think the company was announced in December. I announced my signing early January. You know, we announced Double or Nothing in February. And here we are now in May, 4 months later, I'm getting ready to do this show. But with all these other things happening, it's like, I think people are ripe for this. It's like people are ready to see this show. Please, let's see a great show. Now listen, WWE has some great wrestlers and some great performers. And I watched Money in the Bank last night, and Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles was a tremendous match. The Money in the Bank match, Save the Finish, was a tremendous match as an actual performance. So it's not like the wrestling side is taking a hit. It's more of just kind of the overall opinions about kind of what's going on behind the scenes and that sort of thing. So in the meantime and in between time, if I can coin a phrase from the great Ed Whalen, we've kind of just been waiting in the weeds, getting all of this stuff prepared and ready to go. Now, once again, when you're starting from scratch, everybody's starting from scratch, right? Like the announcers, Alex Marvez, Excalibur, you know, sitting down with Jim Ross and doing kind of announcing classes, doing dry runs. They've never called a match yet, you know. And then you got, you know, the production team. And we have a long-time genius in Keith Mitchell, who's been doing this for years, but I'm sure he's got a crew of people that probably a lot of them have never done something like this before, maybe something similar, but a live wrestling show is a whole ball of wax. And same thing with the PR company that we're working with, and, you know, booking arenas, and you know, we didn't even have a wrestling ring for a while. So there's so many things going on where you're dealing with also a total front office, and I am not part of the office. I'm not one of the executive vice presidents or whatever the terms are. You know, Cody's in there, and Kenny, and Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, and of course Tony Khan kind of heading everything up. And I know they have a lot of conversations and a lot of booking meetings and a lot of plans. I'm not privy to those conversations. You know, I get people calling me every day. If you, probably some of you even listening, from announcers to referees to wrestlers to people that want to write the shows. It's like, how can I get involved? How do I get involved? And I don't know. I'm just a singer in a rock and roll band. You know, I have nothing to do with that behind the scenes type hierarchy, but these guys are now dealing with all this stuff. I mean, Cody calls me constantly about, let's try this for an entrance, and let's do this for a ring song, and let's try this and try that. He's probably getting 1,500 calls and texts and emails a day, asking about all sorts of different things that he probably never even thought about. And we haven't even started on live TV yet, but that's okay. That's part of the beauty of this. And I mentioned it before in the last podcast I did. I think part of the reason why people love AEW so much is because they see themselves as being a part of something new, being a part of something that's growing, being a part of something that you see from its birth, from its inception, watching how it grows and builds. So when it becomes something famous and big and successful, you can say, I was there. I feel the same way about Metallica. I got into Metallica in 1984, 1985, when Ride the Lightning came out. I had to step back one year to get Kill 'Em All, but ever since then, I've been with Metallica from the start. So when Metallica made it huge, I felt like, hey, I have some stake in that. I helped promote Metallica. I helped push Metallica. I helped spread the word like some kind of a pioneer, you know, a missionary going into these uncharted areas to explain the brilliance and beauty of Metallica. So I think we have the same chance to do that with AEW. And with Chris Jericho, I can be the bridge to bring a lot of eyeballs onto the product that haven't seen it before. But now it's not just on me. Now there's people going, they're on TNT? And what I didn't realize, what I did not know, is that I forgot that TNT used to be the home of WCW Nitro. I mean, how huge is that? And here I am, 20 years later, and it is exactly 20 years since I had my last match on Nitro, which I believe was against Booker T. Someone posted the date, maybe April 5th, 1999, or something along that timeline. But here I am 20 years later, about ready to return to the TNT network. Who would have ever thunk that? Who would have ever thunk that a year ago when I said I wouldn't work anywhere in the United States except for WWE out of respect to the company? Well, things have sure changed. And now I'm all aboard. I'm all in, no pun intended. You know, and like I said, double or nothing really is double or nothing is everything, because you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And that's why when we started talking about the main event and what match would I have, I had only one choice, Kenny Omega. And there were some people that are saying, well, should you do that? Maybe you guys should wait and build it. It's such a big match. And I'm like, you can't be pompous and arrogant enough to assume that there's going to be another match, that there's going to be another show. We have to throw the very best show at the people that we can, because we've got a lot of people that are going to be watching, a lot of people looking for an alternative to the WWE. And that's what we're saying. We're not competition, we're alternative. We give you an option, and that's okay to have some options. So I think that's kind of why this weekend is so important for so many different reasons. Mostly the product, the buzz, you know, the look of it. I mean, the idea that Cody came up with for my entrance is amazing. I've never had a, shall we say, event entrance. And what I'm saying by that, like at WrestleMania, I was usually always the heel. So, I remember Edge, when I wrestled Edge at WrestleMania, he had like a big spaceship that came down, or Shawn Michaels had a big gun and shooting, confetti into the crowd, or he had zip lines, and John Cena would have, tanks, or Rusev had a tank and Cena had like a long line of 1,000 John Cenas, and I just never had anything like that before. Either I was a heel or just maybe not the focal point or whatever. I mean, I always had great entrances with great lights and all that sort of stuff. I'm not saying they half-assed it, and obviously my pyro was always double everybody else's, but as far as actually having something that you've never seen before, we now have that for this entrance for Saturday. And I think you guys are going to dig it. I think it's a very, very cool idea that Cody had. So, I'm excited now because I'm getting a chance to do some of these things that I've never done before. And to be the main event for such an important, monumental show, it is a lot of pressure in a good way. It's why I still do this, because I know there's a challenge for me. If you're in the main event of WrestleMania, it's still, I was there too. Being in the main event of WrestleMania is one of the hugest honors and lots of pressure, but it's also WrestleMania. There'll be a WrestleMania the next year, and there'll be a WrestleMania the year after that, and the year after that. Obviously, like you said, now that we have this weekly television deal, we're not going anywhere. But still, if this show gets off to a great start with a great main event, then it bodes well for the future for everybody involved in AEW. So I think that's one of the reasons why people are stoked about this. To sell 12,000 tickets in 4 minutes, that's no mean feat. People are traveling in. There's people that are trying to get tickets, trying to still, weasel their way in there on the back door or something like that, put on a fake mustache and say they're part of the ring crew, whatever it may be. But to me, like I said, the build-up for this has been, it's been, once again, such an interesting thing when you think about it, that the build-up for this whole show, much like the build-up for the whole company, has been specifically online. Online, social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. That's it. There's no TV ads or magazine ads or anything like that. I put up 4 videos over the past few weeks, and they've done 1 million downloads, views combined just on Instagram alone. That's how we're keeping it rolling. I did a promo a few months ago that people were saying is one of the best promos Jericho's ever done. And then I compounded that with doing something with Cody at the office in Atlanta. I did another promo. All these are on Instagram if you want to go watch them, where Cody said he was going to find me because I called him and badmouthed him after he said some remarks about me, and I threw money at him. And then I went to the office and I beat up his little apple-eating little boy there, whatever his name is, Apple Boy. And then I posted another one when I was training, doing my MMA training that I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 months when they went to the upfronts. And then I posted another one today, of course, or a few days ago, talking about my actual finish, the Judas Effect, which we'll talk about. But now people are saying, okay, Jericho and Cody now have something going on, and Jericho and Kenny now have something going on, and this is only through 1 2-minute pieces on YouTube. Think about that. Think how we're taking advantage of the modern era to get people interested in these matches and these feuds and these angles. And you're like, well, it's not even on TV. It doesn't have to be. We've told the story that Cody said something about me. I berated him with a phone call. He didn't appreciate it. He wanted to fine me as his boss. So then I did a dick move and said, how much is the fine? Threw money at him, went to his office as he tried to calmly reason with me, freak out, beat up his assistant, and then go and learn a new finish that now everybody knows about this finish by proxy of the fact that I just went and did this video for it. And how the finish came about is called the Judas Effect. It's a spinning back elbow. Because I've been doing a lot of hardcore, heavy MMA training. Here in Tampa, Dave Bautista has built his own gym. It's not a public gym, but he lets his friends use it. His trainer's Josh Rafferty. Josh trained Dave for WrestleMania. Josh trained Jake Hagar for his Bellator career. His last 2 Bellator fights, he's 2-0. And he's training me for Double or Nothing. And I have gotten so much out of these training sessions. It's the best training I've ever done in my life. And it's not like I'm sitting there doing Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It's a lot of kicking and punching and bags and rope swings and bike riding and all that sort of stuff. But it's just nonstop circuit training. Go, 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 go. And so we're doing, right punch, left punch, jab, 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 right kick, left kick, knee, 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 spinning elbow or something like that. He just called it one time. I'm like, what's that? He goes, well, it's just, it's like a spinning elbow sort of thing. So I did this and I thought, you know what? That's really cool. I think I could use it as a finish because the secret to a great finish in wrestling is to be able to come up with a finish that you can do to anybody. You can give it to anybody. And obviously the easier the bump it is, the better it is. And that's why, like, the Stone Cold Stunner, or, you know, that's why I came up with the Code Breaker, because to do the Walls of Jericho to Big Show is not the most easy thing you can do. That's why I always feel for guys like, you know, Kenny Omega, One Wing Angel, or CM Punk with the Go to Sleep, or, you know, AJ Styles with the Styles Clash. It's, you know, it's hard to give. If you can't give your finish to the Big Show and Rey Mysterio and everyone in between, don't do it. You know, remember Nikki Bella recently had to retire. One of the reasons because of her neck is the rack attack. You're picking somebody up on your shoulders, you're falling to your knees. That's not only jarring your knees, your shoulders, your neck, everything else. Maybe not the best idea for a finish. So the spinning elbow to the face was a great idea because I can do it to anybody. People know it's legit. Everyone knows what it's like to get poked in the face or punched in the face or popped in the nose. And it's something you can do this move anytime, any place, anywhere to anybody. And it's legit, and it looks tough, and it looks like it's gonna hurt you, and that's the perfect thing for a finish. So I practiced it a few more times with Josh. Then I went to Southern Championship Wrestling in just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, where Kenny and I did a little bit of an angle. I'll tell you about that as well. And Nathan Mowry, who did the Judas video for Fozzy and Burn Me Out and Painless, he's involved with this company. He lives in Atlanta, works at DDP Yoga Center. So he's DDP's director, video guy. So I said to him, are you free on Monday? He said yes. I flew him down. We went to Josh's gym. We worked out, did the move a bunch of times, the spinning elbow. So we're going to call it the Judas effect. I had Josh comment about how effective it could be, how dangerous it could be. I said to Nathan, I need about a minute to put together this trailer coming soon, the Judas effect, and treat it like, you know, a little vignette, like a little movie. And that way, once again, not having TV and not having any matches to really try this move, now people are anticipating the Judas effect because we put out this trailer, like I said, on Instagram and YouTube, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now people have kind of a sense for what it is, which is a very cool thing. And I think, once again, taking advantage of the way that we're doing things here, and taking advantage of the fact that we can use this social media to build our stories. And I think, once again, you know, I mentioned Southern Championship Wrestling. I think we had a great time at Southern Championship Wrestling, and the idea for that is there's so many little pop-up things that not so many. Cody and the Bucks had done pop-ups where they were showing up, you know, at different smaller shows, indie shows, and just being there creates buzz, and maybe they're doing a little bit of an angle for whatever kind of match that they're working with, and it keeps people going, it keeps people interested, it keeps people into it. And I know when I was thinking about doing something with Kenny, I wanted to do something about 3 weeks before to really create that last little bit of buzz. Gary Lamb, he runs the Action Center in Canton, Georgia, which is also the home of Fozzy, as we rehearsed there. That's where the Painless video was filmed behind the church, the Action Center. The Burn Me Out video was filmed inside of it. Somebody rented out his church, his room, for a wrestling show. He said, I can do a better job, and he started Southern Honor Wrestling, SHW, Southern Honor Wrestling. And he's drawing good crowds, 400 people, 500 people, 600 people. And I said, that's where we should do it. So we got Cody involved. Cody was advertised to, you know, help announce that Sunny Days, one of the guys who works there and works behind the scenes as well, is getting entered into the Battle Royal, the Casino Battle Royale. And I thought, this is great. Cody comes down. He's the local hero, gives the local hero a handshake. Welcome to good luck in the Battle Royal. Congratulations. Then we have a big match. There's a three-way match. At the end, the bad guy beats the good guy. The bad guy's going to take advantage of the good guy, and then Sunny Days comes down, saves the day. Lights go out. Jericho's there, beats the crap out of Sunny Days. Lights go out. Kenny's there. Kenny and Jericho have a big brawl. The dressing room files out, and there's a big pull apart. And I'll get you, sucker. I'll get you, Kenny. And that's kind of how it went. So it was actually a lot of fun dealing with all that, because it's something that we'd never, I hadn't done a match like that in years. You know what I mean? To be a part of kind of the indie scene, you know, kind of be in the little dressing room. And, well, I was kind of in a private dressing room because it was a secret. I didn't want anybody to know that I was there. But it was really, really cool to, you know, see all these young kids coming up and you know, working their butts off in front of, well, it was actually 1,000 people. They had 1,000 people there. So yeah, we really enjoyed that, and it was something that went viral very quickly, and you know, getting a chance to work with some of this younger talent, like I said, to see everybody working so hard and trying so hard. So it was a really, like I said, it was a lot of fun, and I think it was one of those things where everybody benefited from it. Kenny and I's story continued forward, and you know, then the guys in the match were excited as well because they got to be a part of it, and they got to build their names. And then of course we're building our storylines, and just all across the board, it was just a big success, and good to work with everybody. And you know, like I said, Sunny Days was there, and Heidi Katrina was there. She did a great job, and Shannon Moore, hadn't seen Shannon in years, and Lindsay Snow, and AC Mack, and Alan Angels, all of them just had a tremendous showing, and it was a lot of fun to be a part of that. So we still got a long way to go here, but before I continue on, let me take care of one of the sponsors who's making this episode possible. I'm talking about Arm & Hammer's new cloud control litter. Stuff is making life at my house easier as well. Most of you guys know we've talked about this for the last few weeks. I have 3 cats, Mr. Mittens, Snickers, and Indy. There's always litter boxes to clean, and everybody in my house has to do it. My kids' chore charts says that. My wife's got to do it. I got to do it. But thanks to Arm & Hammer's new cloud control litter, none of us are complaining about cleaning the litter boxes, and that's because there is no cloud of nasties when we scoop. Arm & Hammer's cloud control litter is 100% dust-free, free of heavy perfumes, and it also helps reduce airborne dander from scooping, and that's why it is so awesome. So what happens in the litter box stays in the litter box. It's the new cloud control cat litter by Arm & Hammer. More power to you. All right, we're continuing on here talking all about Double or Nothing and why it is everything. I think, like I said, all of these elements of doing these smaller shows and focusing so much on social media and YouTube to really build this, and now it's time to, you know, kind of put the proverbial money where the mouth is and get ready for the show. Now, of course, there's the whole StarCast thing is built around it. It's not an AEW event, even though I think Vince thinks that it is. He's already pulled Kurt Angle. He's pulled The Undertaker. I just heard today Ric Flair can't be there for medical reasons, but there is a big kind of a brouhaha around it. To me, that my biggest and only concern and focus is, of course, on Double or Nothing. So I think there's a lot of heads are going to be turned. So I'm excited once again, as we probably might want to run down the card for a bit here, kind of talk about that, because it's going to be a great card. And obviously, main event, Jericho versus Omega, Alpha versus Omega 2. The moment I worked with Kenny at the Tokyo Dome in January of 2018, very cool, because it's very rare that you face somebody for the very first time and have a classic match. The only other person I can think of, well, I didn't have a great match with The Rock first time. I didn't have a great match, I don't believe, with Edge. But Shawn Michaels, I had a great first match. WrestleMania 19 was the first time we were ever in the ring together. People said it was the best match on the show, and a classic Mania match. The first time was the first time we had ever locked up. Versus Undertaker at SmackDown the day after my birthday, I think in 2010 or 9. I was super hungover. We had a great match. I only worked Undertaker very few times, only a handful of times. That was the first time, and it was a classic. And the other one that stands out for me, of course, is versus Kenny Omega. So as soon as we had that match, it went so well. The first 5-star rating I've ever gotten, for whatever that's worth and whatever that means. You know, a candidate for a match of the year in a year that had 100 matches that are just off the charts. But you know, when you have a guy like that, you can't wait to work with him again. And obviously we did a little thing on the cruise this year, the 6-man Bullet Club versus Alpha Club. But this is kind of the first real official rematch, and it's the perfect way to kick off, you know, Double or Nothing, and it's the perfect way to kind of, like I said, for our first event, we wanted to go out there with our biggest match possible. I think a lot of people will be very excited about this. I know it is, because once again, the last match we had was such a classic, so there's a lot to live up to. But here we are again, 2 kids from Winnipeg, getting ready to work at the sold-out, you know, MGM Grand for our very first main event in AEW history. So it's a big honor, very excited. So once again, looking forward to kind of locking horns with Kenny. He's a very unique guy, the way he thinks, the way he puts together matches, and I think we're gonna have a blast. I'm really getting excited about it. And once again, you know, I've been doing all this MMA training. I lost some weight. I cut up. My cardio is so much better, but it's a different ball of wax when you're in the wrestling ring, man. We did 4 Fozzy shows this week. That's a different ball of wax. I was thinking, well, I'll be fine. I've been doing all this training. I'll be fine on stage. It's not, because on stage you're running, jumping, and singing. You're exuding a lot of air just to be on stage and doing what you got to do for that. So I just can imagine what's going to happen during the match, you know. And the funny thing is, last year I worked in New Japan. I think I had 4 or 5 matches last year total. So I'm getting, you know, 3 or 4 months off in between matches. Now, you know, I'm working with guys that we're working 10, 15 times a month, but now we're all on the same boat. None of us have worked since January or so. I don't think Kenny's had a match since January. I know I haven't. And Cody and then the Young Bucks and those type of guys, they might have had some high spots and stuff, or they might have had a few matches, but definitely the schedule is not what it was back in the past. So I think we're all kind of hoping to be in the best shape of our lives, knowing that when you get in that ring, it's completely different as far as cardio goes. So once again, excited for it. I'm really looking to have a great showing here with a guy that I just really enjoyed working with. And the biggest shame between me and Kenny is the fact that we've only wrestled once, but that's going to be remedied at Double or Nothing this Saturday. Other main event is the AAA World Tag Team Championship with the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Brothers. Now, I think this is another show stealer. I mean, just from the pure athleticism. I think people forget just how great the Young Bucks are, because we haven't seen them for a bit, and you know, the super kick parties and the being the elites and all that sort of thing, which is I'm gonna take a little sip of some water here. This isn't a WWE preview, so there's no drinking any vodka during this show. But I think Matt and Nick, because they have such a great sense of humor, they've really portrayed themselves as not giving a shit in a lot of ways, that you forget how good they are. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed being on the cruise last year, Alpha Club versus Bullet Club, was just how great the Young Bucks are. I remember being in the ring with them. They did a couple things like, these guys are really good. Like, you hear about it, right? I mean, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Japan to work with Okada. I keep hearing how good he is. I want to experience it for myself, so I have my own opinion. And that's what I wanted to do last year with the Bucks, and to be in the ring as a partner with them was tremendous. And obviously, one of the things I'm really looking forward to here in AEW at some point is working against them in a tag team. You know, maybe me and Kenny versus Young Bucks. I think that would be amazing. And I would like to work with them as singles wrestlers too, with Nick and with Matt separately. But I think they're really kind of matched. And once again, the Lucha Brothers are actual brothers. The Young Bucks are actual brothers. Pentagon and Phoenix are 2 of the best high flyers in the world, 2 of the biggest names on the scene. Both of them I want to work with as well. I think Jericho versus Pentagon, and that's a main event anywhere. But I'm really excited because they're both such trailblazers and pioneers in different ways, and they're both brothers. They've got that brother connection. And, you know, I'm sure they've worked before. I think they worked to have this championship match, but this is a whole different ball of wax. In front of this crowd, the Double or Nothing crowd, the AEW crowd, I think it's going to be one of the hottest shows that maybe I've ever been a part of. Like, I don't think you're going to have to do too much to just tear the house down. Obviously, these guys are going to do everything plus the kitchen sink, whatever kitchen sink is in Espanol. But I think that you're going to see everything but the kitchen sink, and rightfully so. You know, I think that the fact that it's going to be a challenge and a challenge accepted from both of them, and that when you have 2 huge entities, 2 huge names, 2 huge teams, I think you're going to find out that they both are going to feel they have something to prove to themselves, to the fans. The kitchen sink in Spanish is fregadero de la cocina. Or is it fregadero de la cocina? I'm not sure. I know cocina's kitchen, so there you go. So sink is fregadero. I never knew that. I've been living in Mexico, went to Mexico many times, did not know that a fregadero was the kitchen sink. So anyways, I think once again, I think there's going to be a lot of bravado, and we have to prove something to each other and prove something to the fans and prove something to the world. And that's why I think that besides Alpha versus Omega, which of course I'm going to say is going to be the best match of the show, I think Lucha Brothers versus Young Bucks is going to be just one of the best high-flying matches you might have seen ever. So once again, what a great 1-2 punch for a main event for Double or Nothing. Talk about a 1-2 punch. Let's go to a one link punch. Not a bad segue. I wanted to give a quick thanks and take a minute to talk about One Link by First Alert, another fine sponsor of Talk is Jericho. Now, One Link by First Alert is making everybody's home safer, smarter, and more fun. First off, the One Link Safe and Sound is going to be your family's new best friend. It's a hardwired, smart smoke and carbon monoxide alarm with a premium home speaker that's also Alexa enabled. You get all of that in one sleek device. So once you have the One Link installed in your house, you can literally say, Alexa, play the latest episode of Talk is Jericho, and it'll come right out of the One Link speaker. The same speaker that's going to alert you and your family if there's smoke or carbon monoxide in your home. I've said it before, I've said it again. Me and my family almost died from carbon monoxide poisoning. I remember my dad just falling down on the ground, just like boom, like a big oak tree, because the carbon monoxide, it makes you pass out and then it kills you. That's why you need to have One Link watching your home. The One Link Safe and Sound is built with First Alert safety technology and provides an immersive, great sound experience. And like I said, you can listen to podcasts or music on the One Link as well. And the One Link by First Alert also offers the One Link Smart Smoke and Carbon Monoxide Alarm that works with the One Link Safe and Sound. So if smoke or carbon monoxide is detected in your home, and trust me, you're not going to know. We did not know. You can't smell it. It's odorless. But this will help you with this. The smart alarm will notify you via exclusive voice and location technology, and it's going to send a notification to your smartphone as well, no matter where you are, home or away. A smart home should start with smart protection, and One Link by First Alert welcomes you to a smarter, safer home. Visit onelink.firstalert.com for more information. That's onelink.firstalert.com. Listen, you need to be safe in your own house. You need to be confident you're going to be safe in your own house. Check out One Link by First Alert. It might save your life. onelink.firstalert.com. Okay, so we're going back to the card here. I want to talk about the great main event for Double or Nothing, and both main events, like you say, maybe double main event, or however you want to slice it, however you want to put it. I think another one that's really intriguing for me, Cody Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes. I think that's just a great idea on Cody's end, because listen, we know that they were going to have, this match. They've done it in WWE, but it wasn't really up to snuff, I don't think, as far as the way that it could have been, as far as the restrictions that are on you. And that's another thing, like I said, with AEW, we don't have as many restrictions as WWE would have. And what I mean by that is you got to run your ideas through a lot of different wheelhouses in WWE. It's just how they operate. And when you work there, you know it. For us, I think we're all on the same page. You know, if you want to do something and you think it's a good idea and the other guy agrees, that's it. You don't have to have it approved and dissected and rewritten and written at all. You just go out there and do it. And I think Cody versus Dustin is exciting. I think the announcement was amazing. And talk about using social media. If you haven't seen the promos that Dusty and Cody cut on the Road to Double or Nothing, the YouTube series, you need to go and watch them. I think for both of them, and Dustin is a great promo guy, and Cody's coming into it as well. Both of them best promos they might have ever cut. That's the thing I want to talk about too, is being the elite. Kind of a companion show was the Road to Double or Nothing, and Cody was very smart in starting that and building that show to where people are watching it to see, once again, what are they going to be dealing with, what are they going to be talking about next, how are they building the matches up. And it's a real kind of cornucopia, plethora, a smorgasbord, if you will, of all the characters in AEW, getting a chance to kind of explain who they are. If you don't know them, you'll find out something about them. If you do know them like me, you'll find out more about the storyline that we're telling. So if you haven't seen Road to Double or Nothing and you're looking for some more info and input into what you're going to be seeing this weekend, go back and check them out. And the cool thing was, I think the Cody Jericho confrontation is getting close to 1 million hits. So once again, that tells me, all right, Jericho versus Kenny, we know we got that. Looks like we could have a Jericho versus Cody at some point as well, and we haven't even gotten started yet. So Cody versus Dustin, I'm very much excited to see that match, and I'm really happy for Dustin Rhodes, because I feel he's had ups and downs over the years, but at the crux of it, he's a great performer, a great character performer, which, you know, you don't see a lot of that sort of stuff. But I'm really excited to see him, really be able to build this story and build this new character that he has. Talk about reinventing. I'm really digging that. So good stuff there. Also, let's go to this. SoCal Uncensored, SCU versus Sema, T-Hawk, and El Lindemann. AEW's got another great partner in addition to AAA. That's one of the reasons why I love the Lucha Brothers match, is that we've kind of become a team. You know what I mean? I guess, like I said, we're working together with AAA, and another great company is Oriental Wrestling Entertainment. Now, if you haven't seen these guys, I mean, oh my gosh, you have to go check it out. They are, I don't know how you describe it. I mean, it's almost like a Cirque du Soleil type of a vibe in the wrestling ring. Lots of very intricate, creative high spots, but it's very smooth, and it's very, like, you're gonna go, oh my gosh, what the hell is that? So I think it's very smart to showcase these guys, showcasing them against some American guys to kind of help ingratiate them into the American style. Of course, Frankie Kazarian, Christopher Daniels, and Scorpio Sky are a great team. They're going to be on Talk is Jericho very, very soon. And I think they actually requested to work with Sema, who I remember seeing him in about 1998 in WCW. He was with Tokyo Magnum and Sema and Dick Fuji and all these guys. So Sema's he's a Japanese cat, but he moved to China and started this new wrestling company with all of this very intricate, almost I said like Chinese circus, Jackie Chan type of performers. So I think they're going to blow people's minds away as well. And that's something else. You're not going to see this anywhere else, only at AEW. And that was another great call by the AEW office, by the guys in charge, who said, let's do something different and bring in some of these guys that can do things that no one's ever seen before. It doesn't always have to be 6'2", 250-pound guys. I mean, I don't know how big these guys are. They might be that big. I don't know, and I don't care. I'm just excited to see them and see exactly what they can do to blow us away. And that's another reason, too, I like the Cody-Dustin match, because there's going to be a lot of high flying going on, pretty much up and down the card. And I think when you have Cody and Dustin, and actually, Kenny and Jericho, too, I don't expect us to be flip-flopping and flying around the ring too much either. Obviously, it's part of our offense, it's part of our style, but I think it's much more of a ground and pound type of contest, whereas you'll get the OWE guys that come out there and just flip-flop and fly, but you have to have a little bit of parity and a little bit of diversity. So, yeah, and I think the best friends bring that, which of course Chucky T and Trent Beretta. They were originally slated to be in the Casino Battle Royal, which we'll talk about, but those plans changed because they didn't want to be a part of the Battle Royal. They want to have their own match, and we got Angelico and Jack Evans from, I believe he's from Calgary, kind of a Hart Brothers offshoot, Hart Brothers graduate. So once again, I think you have another very high-flying team in Angelico and Jack Evans against kind of more ground and pounders, Chucky T and Trent Beretta. So I think once again, you're going to see a lot of emphasis on tag team wrestling because two of the top-level guys and executives are the Young Bucks. And I think there's not a lot going on with tag team wrestling in WWE as far as actual teams. I think Vince's attitude, you can always just take a guy and put them together. It's Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega. There's the team. We like the idea of having actual set teams here in AEW. Obviously, with the Young Bucks, the Lucha Brothers, the Best Friends, and I don't know, maybe Angelico and Jack Evans will be a set team. They're gonna have to think of a name. Maybe Angelico, and Jacoco. Oh, I'm losing my mind here. And Jacoco is what we're gonna call them. All right, then we move on to the ladies. Dr. Britt Baker versus Kylie Ray versus Nyla Rose. Kylie Ray versus Nyla Rose. Once again, in our infancy, we have made it a point to let people know that women's wrestling will not be ignored here, and that's what Brandy Rhodes has such a big part of that. She's really been adamant about putting together a great women's division. I know Kenny Omega's quite involved in that as well too, as far as the vision that he has for this division. So I think Dr. Baker was one of the first signings, and now with Kylie Ray and Nyla Rose earned the opportunity to show the world what you can expect from the AEW's women division. And the thing about Dr. Britt Baker, this is not like Dr. Jerry Graham or something. Like, she actually is a shoot doctor. She's a dentist. So that's good too. I mean, she's not an evil dentist. She's actually just a dentist. So that's kind of a cool storyline there as well. And the fact that we're kind of emphasizing that and putting some exclamation points on her dentistry is very, very cool. Maybe we can get some free cleanings backstage, because I'm sure that's all she's going to want to do is clean everybody's teeth backstage before the show. What a dumb idiot that idea that was, Chris. But yeah, Dr. Britt Baker. So I'm looking forward to this, and also that's kind of a sister match with the six women match that we have as well. Aja Kong, Yuka Sakazaki, and Emi Sakura versus Hikaru Shida, Riho, and Ryo Mizunami. So, I mean, those are Joshi girls. I think they're called, the company they work for is Joshi. And Kenny's super excited about the Joshi girls. So, once again, when's the last time you saw, you know, a 6-woman Japanese tag team match? And, you know, Kenny wouldn't be signing these people if they weren't absolutely amazing. So, I think, once again, you're going to see some really, really cool stuff there. And, of course, Aja Kong has had a huge name value for years. Worldwide, and I was actually quite pleasantly surprised to see that she was coming in. I haven't seen Aja in a while. Not that we're best friends. She might not even know who the hell I am, but I do know who she is. I know she's definitely a pioneer in women's wrestling, which is also very cool to have her on board as well. So we'll get back to the action and the descriptions very, very soon. Double or Nothing is everything, but before then, I want to tell you about my girls, Sierra and Cheyenne. They made another delicious dinner for us with a little help from HelloFresh. The girls made us chicken over lemon parm spaghetti with fresh zucchini. They really enjoyed doing this because this recipe was from the HelloFresh family plan, and it came with all the ingredients they needed, already measured out in the exact portions listed in the recipe. And the girls used the HelloFresh color recipe cards, which showed them how to do it step by step with pictures so they could easily follow along. And I think their dinner might have looked better than the pictures, and it tasted amazing. It's just so easy to do. HelloFresh meals take less than 30 minutes to make and usually take 1 or 2 pots and pans at the most. The cleanup is super quick and easy as well. And I love it because that means I don't have to go to the grocery store. You just got to go online, you select the recipes you want for the week, and then HelloFresh does the rest. They deliver all the fresh, pre-measured ingredients right to your front door, ready to go. HelloFresh also has 3 plans to choose from: classic, veggie, and the family plan. And they do give you the option to switch between them if you want to. So make dinner fun, easy, and delicious. Give HelloFresh a try today and get $80 off your first month at HelloFresh.com/Jericho80. That's HelloFresh.com/Jericho80. Save $80 on your first month of HelloFresh. Just go to HelloFresh.com/Jericho80. That's JERICHO80 and get $80 off your first month at HelloFresh. You are going to love this food and you're going to love these meals. Go check it out now, HelloFresh.com/Jericho80. Okay, so we're getting back to business here. As we run down the card for the biggest show in AEW history, something else I really like here too is this roster that we've put together. I'm really excited to see everybody in the same room at the same time because I've been reading, you know, this guy got signed and that girl got signed and this team got signed and they got signed. But to have everybody in there together is going to be a very cool, surreal moment. And I think it's one of those things where people are going to be really, really impressed by this amazing roster. It's almost like a great football team or a great hockey team, which doesn't surprise me. Obviously, Tony Khan, one of the owners of the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the owners of the Fulham Football Club in London, in the UK. He understands about putting together a team. And a great team has 1 or 2 awesome veterans that can help lead and can still play and can still get the job done. A lot of great rookies that are learning, that have huge potential. And then a lot of guys in their prime, you know, kind of those guys in their 30s, mid-30s that have been doing it for a while and are really ready to win some championships. And obviously we have that. I mean, veteran-wise, myself, Dustin Rhodes, I'll throw Jim Ross in there too because, you know, his commentating, his vision, his experience is second to none. Then you've got Kenny and Cody and you got the Bucks and you got that level of guys who are these superstars already. And once again, like I said, superstars that you've never even heard of for a lot of people. So the overnight sensations that have been doing this for 15 years. But then you got your Hangman Page, and you got Sammy Guevara, and you got, you know, we talked about Angelico and Jack Evans, and you got the Lucha Brothers, and Jungle Boy, and the list continues on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And I'm excited about all of that because it's just going to show that we're just going to be building all of these names and building all these characters and these performers. Doing it the right way, not by fear and by by backstabbing or constantly second guessing yourself. We'll be doing it the proper way, which, you know, if your punches are the shits, we'll tell you that. It's not gonna be one of those things where everybody knows that your punches are the shits except for you, and people laugh behind your back or whatever it might be. We're not doing that. We're gonna be open, full disclosure. We want to have the best team, the best show, the best crew possible. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Adam Page and Pac. I wanted to see that match. Apparently things didn't work out with Pac, and kind of disappointing. But, you know, different people have different ways that they want to run their careers, and I guess happiness is different for everybody. And so I'm not sure who Adam Page will be working, but I'll tell you one thing. I know who's going to be working with him at some point, and that's me. I'm looking forward to that. I can't wait to lock horns with the Hangman. And I'm sure he'll have another match very important on this show one way or another. One of the signings that I actually brought to the table is Sammy Guevara. I saw him on an NWA pay-per-view that I watched. Billy Corgan's fine organization. I said we should sign that guy. He's really good-looking guy, very athletic and exciting. So Sammy Guevara is going to be up against Kip Sabian in the buy-in in the opening part of the show. Sabian was originally scheduled as an entrant in the Casino Battle Royal as well, but now he'll be squaring off with Sammy to help get people interested in the show and lead them to the main show. It's going to be very exciting. I'm sure it's going to be a high-flying match. And once again, we are now advertising, open for business. Everything we do has to draw eyeballs onto our product, because people are saying, when we go on national TV, how many people are we going to be drawing? Are we going to have, 100,000 people, 500,000, 1 million, 2 million? How many people out there want to see a wrestling show from a new company? And we're banking on hopefully millions. And I think one of the ways to get that attention, A, is to get a great TV deal, which we have done. B, get a lot of people involved that are going to be just burning it up and tearing it up. And I think when you're flipping through the channels and you see, the buy-in is on, you see Sammy Guevara versus Kip Sabian, there's going to be people going, I want to see this show. And then people that want to see the show that are going to go find the buy-in just to see that part of the show as well. So, I think another thing when I mentioned being on TNT, which is so huge for TV in the States, I think the fact that we're on ITV in England it may be even bigger. That's like the equivalent of being on NBC in the States. I know WWE is not on ITV. I know they've been trying for it for years, and obviously with the buzz that AEW has, that connection with the Khan family and Fulham Football Club has led us right to ITV, which has been a huge supporter of ours. I know there's going to be a show on ITV kind of building up Double or Nothing. I know I filmed a bunch of stuff for that. So, coming out of the gates with ITV and TNT behind us, that kind of bodes very, very well for the future of our company and for getting people's eyes and ears and attention as to what we're going to be doing through this company. So, another great attraction for Double or Nothing is the Casino Battle Royale, which I love. Have you ever seen the Casino Royale? It's a great, I don't know if it's a great James Bond movie, but it's the one James Bond movie starring George Lazenby as James Bond. So this is the Casino Battle Royale. This is also going to be in the buy-in, I believe. And I think originally we were going to do the over the budget Battle Royal, but now we've got different rules to this. In the Casino Battle Royale, 5 competitors begin the match, with 5 more being added to the mix in 3-minute intervals. And then the 21st entrant is Lucky 21, and he enters last. So it's kind of cool, a little bit of an update there. And you're talking about a guy who created the Money in the Bank match, and a guy who created the Ambrose Asylum and the Festival of Friendship. So anytime you can get something new, that's exciting. And I think there's already some confirmed entrants. I know MJF is in there. Got to watch him. He's kind of stealing my scarf gimmick, but not wearing too many scarves nowadays. And his are more kind of those lame Dillard's scarves, so not rock and roll scarves. So MJF's going to be in there. Sonny Kiss, big fan of him. Brandon Cutler, Ace Romero, Glacier. Jeez Louise. Hadn't seen Glacier since 1998. We called him Fat Fingers the Magician because he used to do magic tricks. That was a Raven name for him. Fat Fingers the Magician. Another one of my suggestions, Brian Pillman Jr. I'm a big fan of him. Sunny Days, the aforementioned Sunny Days from Southern Honor Wrestling. Great for him. Joey Janela is going to be there. Big fan of Joey. And Dustin Thomas. If you haven't seen Dustin Thomas, check this out. He doesn't have any legs, and that is a true story. What a talk about an inspirational figure with that. So Really cool to have him involved, and he's got like to have a match against. And how would you do that? Well, I guess we're going to find out and be watching him. So a lot more people will be involved. Like we mentioned, we've got pretty much, I think, 58 people on the roster or something along those lines. So it's a hell of a roster. Very, very excited about all of this stuff. And I'm very, very excited as well to tell you about a message I have to share from our friends at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. I'm not going very far. I'm in a rush. It's too uncomfortable. Sometimes I just forget. Listen, leave all that stuff behind you. Don't kid yourself. There's no such thing as a good excuse for not buckling your seatbelt, okay? If you used any of those excuses or any others, you're putting yourself at risk of injury or death. In 2017, check this out, more than 10,000 people were unbuckled when they were killed in crashes. That's 51% of people killed in motor vehicle crashes that were not wearing seatbelts. No matter what kind of vehicle you drive, wearing your seatbelt is the best defense in a crash. Even when you sit in the back seat, you still need to buckle up. And that goes when you ride in taxis and when you use ride-sharing services. Just because you're paying to drive, get driven somewhere, doesn't mean you shouldn't put on a seatbelt. You know, cops are on the lookout and writing tickets, so why take the risk, right? In 2017 alone, seatbelts saved nearly 15,000 lives. So do the smart thing and buckle up every trip, day or night. Click it or ticket. All right, so this AEW Double or Nothing is Everything preview is also being sponsored in part by Indeed. When it comes to hiring, you don't have time to waste. You need help getting to your short list of qualified candidates fast. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screener questions, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. And when you need to hire fast, accelerate your results with sponsored jobs. New users can try for free at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms, conditions, and quality standards apply. All right, as we're winding down here, just kind of getting to the nittiest of the greatest of AEW. I think if you're a wrestling fan, you're going to understand just how special of a time this is, and just how big this has opportunity to become. Not only with the great TV deals that I discussed, not only with the great roster that I discussed. I mean, the fact that we're doing the Jericho Cruise together. They were the first call I made was to AEW. And like I said, by proxy, the fact that we don't know when our TV is going to be, Tuesday or Wednesday, but if you look between January 20th and January 24th next year, when the Jericho Cruise second wave sets sail, one of those days might be a Tuesday or Wednesday. And if we have a live TV show that needs to be taped, I wonder where it might be taped. I'm not sure exactly yet, but something that we're maybe thinking about. Even more so, this is doing something, once again, not to compete with the WWE or beat the WWE. This is an alternative. We're giving people an option, and there's nothing wrong with having options. We're giving people a chance to experience something a little different. This is the type of wrestling that I used to enjoy doing when I first started. Not that I didn't enjoy WWE. I love WWE, but once again, when you're outside of the system, it's really fun to not have to second guess yourself or have to get permission to do this or get approval to do that. Just do it. Because when you know it's good, when you have experience, I'm almost 30 years experience, believe it or not. October 2nd of this year, but my 29th year in the wrestling business. When you have that much experience, I know if it's good or if it's bad. Now, sometimes I might need to ask some people's opinions. Sometimes I might need to ask some other people to add to these ideas. But most of the time, you pretty much know if it's right or wrong. And I think all of us feel the same way. And everybody's on the same page. I mean, it's a very, almost a family atmosphere right now. And you can see that if you look at the upfronts. Tony Khan was there with Adam Page and the Bucks and Matt's wife, Dana, who's very involved in the merchandising side of things. And of course, Cody's wife, Brandy, very involved in the company. Britt Baker was there, Kenny was there, Cody was there. And they're all kind of hanging out together, taking pictures with Henry Potter and pictures with Shaq, and you can tell they're just excited to be at the upfronts. I've been to 20 upfronts. I'm bored of the upfronts. They weren't bored at all. They were super excited to be there, as they should have been, because this is a big deal. And let me just say one more thing about Tony Khan. You've heard him here on Talk is Jericho. We discussed him before. Guy's got so much passion, very knowledgeable about the business, and not a pushover. It's one of those things. It's not like the old school money mark. You're not going to get that with Tony. He's got ideas and thoughts. He knows what he wants to do, but he's also wide open to letting his generals lead the charge. So that's another thing I really appreciate about working for this company and being a part of this company, being a big part of the company, right from the start. Like, 20 years from now when AEW is going, I won't be in the ring. Heaven forbid. But I'll still be involved with this company if things continue to go the way they are, because I'm really enjoying it. And like I said before, before I went back to WWE in 2016, I was thinking, well, maybe I'll go back, just do house shows from now on, or go back for a short run, or maybe it's time to start thinking about retiring. But then I did the thing with Kevin Owens. We had such a great time. My matches were getting better. I was learning from the younger guys, figuring out how to reinvent and evolve. Then going to Japan, that'll happen again. Hooking up with Kenny and the Bucks and Cody. Then hooking up with with Tony Khan, not to be confused with Cody Khan. And then, doing this cruise and having everybody involved. Like, wrestling for me now has returned back to what it should be, which is just a great time, having fun, being a part of something, being creative, knowing that you're part of a revolution. Like when I said I want to change the universe, people are like, oh, see what he did there, WWE Universe, he's taking the piss. It's like, no, let's change the universe. Let's change the wrestling landscape. Can that even be done? Well, it takes somebody with a different mindset and a different attitude. If you go to the status quo and just go with the flow, hey man, this is what you get. Wrestling is wrestling. It ain't rocket science. It is what it is. We disagree. We think there's other ways to do this great sport. We think there's other ways to revamp this whole scene and make people excited about wrestling, and not just do things because this is the way it's been done. Why do you have to do things the way it's been done? I have ideas for my match. I don't want to do certain things I did for years just because why not see if you can do it without? Let's change some things. Let's change the universe, right? I think now is the time. It's a very, very important night on Saturday, and a very, very important time for the business, knowing that we do exist. All Elite Wrestling is real. We are not going anywhere. We have the television now. We have the roster. We have the financial support, and it seems like we got a lot of fans too. Just how many? We're going to find out. I don't expect every show to sell out in 4 minutes, but I expect there to be a lot of ticket sales and a lot of buzz and a lot of people watching. And this weekend, whether you watch it on the Bleacher Report streaming service through Warner, or whether you're watching on normal pay-per-view on Fight TV, or whether you're watching it on ITV, or whether you're watching it whatever way you're watching it, maybe you're in the arena watching the MGM Grand, I think you're going to see a show this weekend that you haven't seen in a long time. Hunger, desire, stakes are high. There's a lot for people to sink their teeth into as a performer and as a fan. I know for me, this is the most important night of my career. After almost 30 years headlining WrestleManias, headlining Tokyo Domes. I've done all those things, but they're always with a company that wasn't mine. I worked for the company. I loved the company. Now this company is mine. We are planting the seeds and watching it grow. It's like Game of Thrones. This is now the dragon's egg. And we're going to cultivate it, and we're going to sit on that and protect that dragon's egg. And when the dragon is born, it's still very, very small and weak. But when that dragon grows, are you kidding me? You saw what happened a couple weeks ago in Game of Thrones when Drogon burnt down the city. Let's burn down some fucking cities, guys. We'll see you this Saturday. Double or Nothing. Alpha Omega 2. Kenny Omega, let me say this. It's been driving me crazy for the last year and a half that I lost to you at the Tokyo Dome. Omega 1, Jericho 0. I've never had a 0 in my life. I've never been a 0 at anything. I've never had any zeros other than the ones on my check ever. When it comes to my record against you, it's a 0. It's a goose egg. It's zilch. It's nada. It's bupkis. I don't like it. It's kept me awake at night. It's one of the reasons why I signed with AEW, and I was counting down the days hoping that you wouldn't be stupid enough to go anywhere else. Thankfully, you signed. Thankfully, you came to AEW. And you're not a stupid man. As a matter of fact, you're one of the best performers in the world. You might even be the best wrestler in the world. But I'm the greatest of all time, Kenny Omega. And this Saturday, at Double or Nothing, MGM Garden Arena, sold out. Sold out 12,000 tickets in 4 minutes because of me. Don't forget, after I beat you, I demand that you thank me for making you legit. And I expect every fan in attendance to thank me as well. So yeah, Double or Nothing is going to be great, but we can also call it the Chris Jericho Appreciation Weekend. Sounds good, doesn't it? I'll see you guys all on Saturday for one of the greatest pro wrestling shows of my lifetime or any other. MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, you can stream it on the BR Live app or through traditional television pay-per-view like Fight TV. It's going to be great. Lots of cool stuff. Lots of cool stuff coming for me too, because Las Vegas, I'll be back in Las Vegas in September with Fozzy, because we'll be heading west as we put together an entire tour around our opening slot for Iron Maiden at the Bank of California Stadium in Los Angeles on September 14th. But we'll be on the road starting September 5th in Denver, Marquee Theaters.
Talk is Jericho, baby. Talk is Jericho. Talk is Jericho, mama. Talk is me.
All right, welcome to Talk is Jericho. It's the pod of thunder and rock and roll. And before we get into Banned, the Money in the Bank preview that WWE does not want you to hear with me and the returning Jack Slade, let me welcome someone who's never banned from Talk is Jericho. Always welcome, always bearing gifts of great jokes, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Duff McKagan, and the Duff McKagan joke of the week.
Hey, Chris Jericho, Duff McKagan calling you. I just got back from London, and where I heard about this duck. He walked into a bar, and he said, "You got any bread?" Bartender says, "No." Duck repeats, "You got any bread?" Bartender says, "No." "You got any bread?" "No." "You got any bread?" "No." "You got any bread?" The bartender says, "Listen, if you ask me if I have any bread one more time, I'm going to nail your beak to the bar." Duck says, "You got any nails?" Bartender says, "No." "You got any bread?" Thank you very much.
I actually really like that one. You got any bread? You got any bread? If you don't stop that, I'll put a nail in your beak. Got any nails? No? Got any bread? I like that one. Another Duff McKagan original classic right here on Talk is Jericho. Thanks to Duff for getting our weekend going. He will be here very soon, maybe even as early as next week, to join us on Talk is Jericho to talk about his new solo record. But in the meantime and in between time, we're here to talk about the Money in the Bank pay-per-view that happens on Sunday. And this is Banned, the Money in the Bank preview that WWE does not want you to hear, starting now on Talk is Jericho. So, after I was banned from the WWE a couple months ago, last month, whatever it was, Jack Slade and I did the WrestleMania preview, which the WWE did not want people to hear, Jack.
That's right, yeah. I have now been banned from attending shows.
Which
not WWE shows, just shows in general.
Just all shows in general, which is why you're not actually as we speak, I think the WWE is actually filming SmackDown in London right now.
That's right, yeah, they are. I think O2 Arena. So I'm not there.
But you did have tickets, and they actually sent a WWE Ninja to come take your tickets away, or is that kind of what went down? Or
yeah, pretty much. It was more instead of a ninja, it was just kind of a man, just a man in a suit, really.
Like was it Harvey Whippleman or something?
Well, no, because that's apparently who I am. Yeah. So my doppelganger just showed up.
Who are the guys that people say you look like again?
Yeah, Whippleman, Neville or Puck, which I don't get because we look nothing alike. Who else was it?
There was one other one. I can't remember who the other one was.
Oh, Bill Alfonso.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Bill Alfonso is probably the best one because you actually have similar physiques as Bill Alfonso.
That's right. Yeah. We're just not quite the the same age or anything, but yeah.
And of course, I'm not a meth head either. If I'm allowed.
Oh well, no. Well, I
that?
mean, I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out when you get banned from Bill Alfonso shows.
Banned from any future ECW reunion shows.
Yeah.
Oh, did you just
exactly.
Did you just take a sip of something there, Jack?
I do. It's nothing too heavy, but I've got a wonderful cerveza in my hand.
Okay.
So
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's good. As long as you have something. Remember last time you had some kind of ash flavored mezcal or something that you had, or some kind of.
Oh God, yeah,
What were you
horrible tequila.
Oh yeah. Okay, well
It was horrible.
I have a yeah boy with a fine dollop of cranberry juice because now that we're officially banned, we have to be a little bit more responsible. So we're actually taping this earlier. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon here, which is about 8 o'clock in England.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, even though we're taking precautions with that, we still haven't done any research. or at least I haven't. I don't know about you.
Zero. No. Like I said, in this, knowing the way that the WWE is, they might have changed the entire card on SmackDown as we speak. Because, like I said, we always try and do this on a Tuesday, which is after Raw, because then SmackDown is on. But nothing really important ever happens on SmackDown, anyways.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So, like I said, our WrestleMania preview that the WWE does not want you to hear did a great number. So I think we're gonna try again as we talk about Money in the Bank 2019, which takes place this Sunday. Do you know where it takes place?
Is it in Hartford, Connecticut?
Oh, you have done some research then.
Well, just as we speak, yeah, I've done a slight bit of Wikipedia searching.
That's the thing. We're both on the same Wikipedia page, which gives us all the information. Looking at the poster right now, which looks pretty cool. Becky two belts.
That's right.
In a throne, on the poster, which looks pretty cool.
Yep. Actually, there is a pretty cool post.
She is funny because for years in the WWE, here's a secret WWE expose, shall we say? You weren't allowed to say the word belt.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So have they just allowed it now for Miss Lynch to be able to call herself that?
I guess for merchandising purposes or whatever, but it was not a belt. It was a title or a championship belt. You could not say the words belt in any way, shape, or form because in the words of Vince McMahon, a belt is something you buy at J.C. Penney's to hold your pants up.
So wait, you could say championship belt, but you just couldn't say belt.
Right. You couldn't, and don't ever say strap. If it was Becky's two straps, not gonna happen.
What about like a strap match?
You would have to call it a universal tethering match, a universal tethering apparatus match. I think is what they wanted us to call it.
Yeah, that's a technical term, isn't it? Yeah.
Do you have a J.C. Penney's in England?
We do not, because I'm not too familiar with what is it. Just a department store?
Yeah, it's a department store.
No, so we don't have them by name, but we do have department stores of kinds. You know, they don't sell anything good, just departments.
They actually sell departments, do they?
yeah. It's just in case you need one.
If you're looking to buy like a complaint department, you can.
Oh, plenty of those. Yeah, you plenty of those with just middle-aged English women that are just they want to speak to the manager all the time.
Just constantly. What kind of department stores do you have in England that you might want to go to buy a belt that holds up your pants?
I mean, I think the most English would be Debenhams. I would say that's a pretty good bet for a department store. I'm trying to think what else now. John Lewis. That's another very posh upmarket department store.
What about Harrods? Is that one?
Oh yeah. I mean that's the epitome of it. That's exactly where you want to go if you want to buy departments and just very expensive posh food and snacks.
Oh, posh. What would be a posh snack?
Oh, like caviar or something, I guess. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's full on over there. You can spend hours in that place.
Looking at all the different flavors of caviar.
That's right. Yeah.
There used to be a popcorn place here in the States that you could go get like blueberry popcorn and grape popcorn and like seaweed flavored popcorn or something.
Seaweed popcorn?
I don't know. I probably made that one up. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
But at Harrods, you can find chocolate caviar, cherry flavored caviar.
Was it on? Did we talk about caviar in the last one as well? Or was that?
I don't know. I mean,
was it something else? Was that maybe in another one?
You're from England, so everybody in England talks and eats caviar, obviously, right?
That's true. Yeah, we all have a monocle, and we all eat a lot of caviar.
You all look like the guy from the Monopoly game.
Yeah. Big waxed moustaches. Yeah.
And that's also a great thing too, a moustache. That's my favorite pronunciation of the word moustache.
Yep.
We're talking about the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Quick little trivia for you. Do you know who invented the Money in the Bank match?
Yeah, is it you?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Why don't you take over the interviewer position and ask me about it, Jack?
So how did you come up with this, Christopher?
Okay, so WrestleMania 2005, which I believe was in LA, I think, something like this. There was a group of guys